Chapter 328. Boss, wait up. The two of them had just left Ethereal Palace and were about to ride their swords to the army camp when they heard someone shouting. Turning around, they saw Qin Feng running out excitedly, followed by Chu Ping'er and Xiao Wanqing. Boss, I want to ask you something. Qin Feng chuckled. Yu Qianzhou found him an eyesore no matter how he looked at him. What? You want a woman? Go find one yourself, don't look for me. No, I'm not that. I'm not that greedy. Qin Feng almost said the wrong thing in a moment of desperation. Yu Qianzhou glared at him. Spit it out. Qin Feng was in a good mood. No matter how much Yu Qianzhou scolded him, he wouldn't be unhappy. He nodded and bowed. Didn't you say that the limit-breaking pill is different from the real and fake pills? I want Xiao Wanqing to raise her cultivation first. That won't be a problem, right? He just had a girlfriend and now he wanted to please her. What a good man. Yo, since when are you so proactive? I want a F***ck. Yu Qianzhou suddenly slapped his forehead and pointed at Qin Feng. It's all your fault. I almost forgot to tell you the most important thing. When Chu Ping'er walked over, he said to them, remember, this limit-breaking pill doesn't have any side effects. The only flaw is that after the effects, the person will be unable to move for a month. If you want to raise your cultivation again, you'll have to wait for a month before you can take the second limit-breaking pill. But how can this be? Qin Feng exclaimed. Guan Yu and Chu Ping'er also frowned. Only Xiao Wanqing, who was standing quietly at the side, didn't know what they were talking about. Yu Qianzhou nodded and said, this is the difference between the limit-breaking pill and the true and pseudo pills. The poison from the true and pseudo pills will accumulate, but the poison from the limit-breaking pill will be automatically consumed by the body. The body will be stiff for a month to neutralize the poison. If you want to take the limit-breaking pill, remember to arrange the things at hand first. Also, it's not a good feeling to be awake but unable to move for a month. This is not meditation, you have to be mentally prepared. The few of them didn't expect that there was such a powerful relationship, and their expressions changed. Imagine being awake but unable to move your body for an entire month. Sure enough, there was a price to pay for improving one's cultivation. It was not an easy thing to do. Chu Ping'er gently walked to Yu Qianzhou's side, bit her lips and said, a month of pain can be exchanged for an increase in cultivation. I'm a little worried about you going out alone. Why don't you go out a month later? It's always good to increase your cultivation. I can take care of you here. It's still the best to have a wife and a child by my side. Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly and said, I still have a lot of things to do and some things have to be settled quickly. How can I not go out for a month? We'll talk about it in the future. Oh right, Ping'er, if big sister comes out, tell her about what happened today so that she can be prepared. Got it. Chu Ping'er looked at Yu Qianzhou and nodded. Her man was always on the move and he might face danger often. She felt her heart ache for him. When Xiao Wanqing heard the tender words of the two men, she felt a little worried. Don't spread the news about the limit-breaking pill to anyone else. Just as Yu Qianzhou finished speaking, he heard the faint sounds of fighting from afar. He knew that the troops were training, so he turned to Guan Yu and said, let's go take a look. The long swords on their backs shot out at the same time, and the two of them stepped on their swords and flew into the sky. The three people in front of the ethereal palace watched them leave. In a hilly area with undulating mountains, the two of them stood on their swords and looked down. 6 regiments of troops were fighting in 6 different places, and it was hard to tell who had the upper hand. Yu Qianzhou observed carefully and found that most of the people from the 6th Bureau who were training were wearing black suits. What was strange was that there were dozens of people in white suits in the middle of the 6 regiments. Yu Qianzhou asked curiously, what's the meaning of this? Guan Yu observed the situation below and said, today's training is to fight with numbers and to fight with the weak against the strong. Those in white suits are the nascent soul experts of each regiment, and they are to be used as hypothetical enemies. The moment he said that, Yu Qianzhou's interest was piqued. The people below seemed to be in a mess, but under the command of their commander, they advanced and retreated in a measured manner. Be it attacking or defending, they were able to exert their collective strength to the maximum. As soon as the white-clothed members made their move, the black-clothed members with higher cultivation would immediately come forward to block the attack, while the other black-clothed members would seize the opportunity to launch a group attack. Even those with weaker cultivation would be able to release a flying sword to confuse the enemy. After a series of fierce attacks, the white-clothed members would be forced to defend themselves. Yu Qianzhou nodded repeatedly and said, "Fighting alone is what hooligans do. This is more like a military battle. You guys finally put in some effort and didn't slack off. I was really afraid that you guys would just eat and drink well every day and just laze around." Guan Yu smiled bitterly and said, "Slack off? You've already pointed at my nose and scolded me. I've even dismissed 2 regiments for you. Who dares to slack off? Knowing your mistakes and being able to correct them, knowing your shame will lead to bravery. Not bad, not bad." Yu Qianzhou nodded repeatedly and pointed below. "This is exactly the kind of training that is close to actual combat. When necessary, we can allow for casualties. I'd rather have 1,000 elite soldiers than 8,000 mediocre ones. You can pass on my words and tell them directly that I'm the one who said it. In short, all training revolves around winning battles. I don't care what methods you guys use. In short, when I bring out my troops, they must be invincible. Alright, how often do you guys conduct this kind of actual combat training? Ever since you scolded us that time, the troops have never stopped their actual combat training. Small-scale lightning battles, large-scale chaotic battles, will take some time out every day to conduct it. Sometimes it's during the day, sometimes it's at night. Everyone is constantly trying to find more effective ways to attack and defend." Guan Yu said. "Very good." Yu Qianzhou nodded. He thought to himself, this troop that fights every day shouldn't have a problem beating those sects that raise cats. After thinking for a while, he frowned and said, "Don't be too tense. Every month, give them 3 days of free rest." "Got it." Guan Yu suddenly asked again, "Are you really going to let them take the purple limit-breaking pill? Can't the white one work?" He didn't seem to be worried that Yu Qianzhou wouldn't be able to get enough spirit stones. It seemed that he was very confident in his boss's ability to make money. Yu Qianzhou turned around and looked at him. He knew that he was still worried about the side effects of the purple pill. He waved his hand and pointed to the ground. "Yunchong, according to our previous method, how long do you think it would take for those Foundation Establishment Realm cultivators to reach the Tribulation Passing stage, even if we provide them with enough spirit stones and elixirs to increase their cultivation? At least a few decades, at most a few centuries. But the white limit-breaking pill can increase their cultivation by 1 level in a month. Even if they're all in the early stage of Foundation Establishment Realm, they can all reach the early stage of Tribulation Passing stage in a year." Guan Yu still wanted to fight for his subordinates. "You mean to say that we should stop the troops from training for a year? Then we can take them in stages. At most, we just have to wait a few more years." "No. The troops can't stop training for half a month. I won't be using them for long." Yu Qianzhou decisively refused. He waved his hand and shouted, "Do you know how many spirit stones it will take for all of them to reach the Tribulation Passing stage? Let me tell you, including their daily expenses, they will need at least 20 billion high-grade spirit stones. Do you think I can raise that much money in a short period of time? Do you want me to take it slow and wait for a few more years? A few years plus a few years, how many years is that? Also, do you really think that everyone here can reach the soul formation realm? Let me tell you, that's impossible. Including you and me, maybe no one will have that opportunity. Do you think that I'm harming them? Then tell me, if they don't meet us, how many of them will have the opportunity to reach the Tribulation Passing stage? Not to mention the Tribulation Passing stage, I'm afraid that half of them can't even reach the nascent soul stage." Guan Yu was silent. He was awakened by the 20 billion high-grade spirit stones. He knew that he was being too emotional. Yu Qianzhou's words were reasonable. In fact, there were some things that Yu Qianzhou couldn't tell him. If he was alone in the cultivation world, he wouldn't need to spend so much effort and he could live a good life. But his parents were old. Because of him, they were brought to this world that didn't belong to them. They didn't fit in with the people here. The outside world was where they should stay. Therefore, he had the responsibility and obligation to send them back safely so that they could enjoy their old age. He could wait a few more years, but he was afraid that his parents couldn't. Every time he came back, he would be too embarrassed to meet them. For this reason, he had to control both the cultivation world and the imperial power of the secular world. He had to create a good living environment for the elderly. In fact, it wasn't just that. He had some ideals in his heart. The pillar of the state, General Shi Wenguang's prestige in the Western Army was irreplaceable. Moreover, he wasn't young anymore. If he waited too long, who knew what would happen? The cultivation world was in chaos. If it calmed down in a few years, it would be even more difficult. Also, Bai Chongqing would go to that *T Eastern Holy Land in a few years. He was afraid that the demon domain wouldn't be at ease without the old man guarding it. There wasn't enough time. Chapter 329. After a small argument, the two of them stopped in the air and fell silent. Yu Qianqiu suddenly sighed. Yunchong, do you think that I'm only doing this for myself and not for everyone else? Guan Yu shook his head. No, you're right. I'm just being emotional. It's good that you understand. There are some things you need to know. Yu Qianqiu looked down and said slowly, only when my goal is achieved can I create better conditions for everyone to live better. If I lose the ability to lead them, or if I don't care about them and don't restrain them and throw them out into the outside world, they won't be able to do anything. Do you believe me? Guan Yu thought for a while and nodded. Indeed, even though this group of people was making a big commotion, if they didn't have Yu Qianqiu's strong support, once they were thrown out into the outside world, they wouldn't even be enough for the righteous and demonic Dao to have a feast. Whether it was supporting Immortal Island that occupied the top spot in the cultivation world or 10,000 demons that dominated the demonic Dao, if any one of them made a move, it would be hard for these people to resist. As Yu Qianqiu said, as long as he was doing well, everyone would be better off. This was the truth. I understand. Guan Yu let out a sigh and suddenly felt enlightened. He asked, what are you going to do? Yu Qianqiu frowned. For now, I'm going to follow what I said before. First, help the old members break through to the early stage of tribulation passing. They put in more effort and deserve better treatment. It's worth it to spend more time on them. For them, I'll just give them the white limit breaking pill. For the others, I'll give them according to their positions and cultivation. See how fast I gather spirit stones. Take it slowly from top to bottom. Noted. Guan Yu nodded. He looked down and asked, do you want to go down and take a look? The battle below was getting more and more intense. Yu Qianqiu took a look and said, there's no need. Let's go to Dong Wusu's place and take a look. The two of them rode their swords and left. There was an open space that covered an area of 100 acres, and there were nearly 100 independent courtyards, which almost formed a small town. This was the place for those who already had a spouse to live in. There was also a group of older people led by Dong Wusu who lived here. A few hundred meters away from the town was a plain. Figures were busy working in the fields. The thriving and lush greenery showed that the crops here were growing well. A 2-meter wide and 1,000-meter long stone road was paved in the middle of the plain. The construction was quite large, but for Utopia, which had nearly 10,000 cultivators, it was only a matter of a day. The two of them put away their swords and landed in the middle of the road. Yu Qianqiu immediately saw the vegetables by the side of the road. Pumpkins, peppers, eggplants, beans and so on were piled up in rows on both sides of the road. Yu Qianqiu squatted down and picked up some green peppers. He laughed and said, Yuncheng, looks like you've had a great harvest. Look, these are all pollution-free green products. Guan Yu was stunned. He understood the first part but did not understand the second part. He did not know what Yu Qianqiu meant. Seemed like he was ignorant. He could only smile and say, the crops here don't have as many pests as outside, so they're naturally growing well. Tata. A majestic horse galloped over from afar. The two of them looked over and saw that it was Guan Yu's Red Rabbit. A young man on the horse shouted, is that Big Brother? Red Rabbit galloped over and suddenly stopped. It lifted its front hooves and stood up on its hind legs. The young man on the horse jumped down. It was Yu Wuqiu. Big Brother. Yu Wuqiu called out shyly after getting off the horse. Yu Qianqiu looked at him and nodded with a smile. This little guy was a little older and more sensible. He was not as arrogant as before. He asked, why did you come here? Father and mother were bored, so we came here to help. Yu Wuqiu replied. As they were talking, Dong Wusu and his wife came to the road with Yu Chongray and his wife. They walked towards them. Obviously they had noticed the two of them. The two brothers hurriedly walked over and greeted, Father, Mother. Guan Yu also came over and greeted. In fact, he was older than Yu Chongray and his wife, but he looked younger. This greeting was for Yu Qianqiu's sake. Yu Chongray hurriedly supported Guan Yu and said, Mr. Guan is too polite. Speaking of which, the first time Yu Chongray saw Guan Yu, he was subdued by his demeanor. That appearance was simply too mighty and extraordinary. Especially when he commanded thousands of men and horses and gave orders, it was the demeanor of a scholarly general. This caused Yu Qianqiu to have a stomach full of complaints. I'm clearly the boss here. Yu Qianzhou was sizing up his parents who were dressed like farmers and women. Dong Wuxia and his wife greeted him in Guan Yu and said, "Greetings, leader head instructor Guan." Yu Qianzhou didn't want his parents to see people who were older than them being respectful to him, so he felt that he couldn't stay here any longer. Unexpectedly, he was stopped by Mistress Xue and asked a few questions. After he answered perfunctorily, he asked about Dong Wuxia and his wife's recent situation, and then he found an excuse to run away with Guan Yu. He originally came here to understand more about the situation, but he didn't expect to run into his parents, so he could only run away in advance. This child has grown up. Even his mother is not willing to be close to him. Xue Ernyang looked at the two streaks of light in the sky and was a little unhappy. Tears welled up in her eyes again. Yu Changgue frowned and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? The child has grown up and has his own things to do. Do you think he will let you tie him up with a belt every day?" "Mother, I heard from others that our eldest brother is very powerful." Yu Wuchou looked at the streaks of light in admiration. Dong Wuxia also laughed and said, "Madam, you don't know, but the leader is the #1 figure in our cultivation world." "Who doesn't know Yu Qianzhou?" His wife also comforted him. "Yes. Madam, the leader is a man who does great things. He has a lot of things to do. No matter how powerful he is still my son. How dare he not recognize me as his mother?" Xue Ernyang felt very wronged and wiped away her tears. Yu Changge and Yu Wuchou's faces twitched again. The men in this family, including Yu Qianzhou, were most afraid of Xue Ernyang wiping away her tears, so Yu Qianzhou ran away first. At this time, a violent explosion suddenly came from the distant hilly area, attracting everyone's attention. Dong Wuxia looked into the distance and sighed. If only this old man was a few decades younger. They are a group of strong people. The leader is really generous. Yu Wuchou smacked his lips and his eyes lit up. It must be Chief Instructor Guan's men training again. If only I could be like my eldest brother and the others. Sigh. But sister-in-law said it's dangerous and won't let me go see. Then he turned to Xue Ernyang and smiled apologetically. "Mother, why don't you talk to sister-in-law? She listens to you the most. If you ask her, she will definitely agree. You're even beating around the bush when asking her to give birth to a grandson for me. Which part of her listens to me? She doesn't even respect me, her mother-in-law. That's right. She can fly around in the sky like a fairy. Why would she respect a mortal like me?" Tears of grievance flowed down Mistress Xue's face again. Yu Wuchou stuck out his tongue and quickly shut his mouth. "Nonsense. He treats you well every day. When did she ever take you seriously? Do you still have a mouth?" Yu Changre shouted. Another explosion came from afar, interrupting his words. He frowned deeply. This place was isolated from the outside world, but his son's men were training here all day long. What was his son trying to do? Could it be that there was an emperor in the cultivation world? He suspected that his son was trying to rebel. In his mind, this was the only possibility, so he was always worried. But he had guessed it. Chapter 330. The first house in Utopia was the bamboo house built by Baisuzhen. Now that it had been renovated, there were 3 people living there. Baisuzhen's uncle Xue Qingkong and 2 of Yu Qianzhou's disciples Hong Qi and Zhang Peng. Guan Yu and Xue Qingkong had been chased away by a certain someone to take a walk in the bamboo forest. The bamboo forest was quiet and the ground was covered with bamboo leaves. Occasionally some of them would fall. This was one of the forbidden areas in Utopia. Without permission, no one was allowed to enter. Yu Qianzhou, who was sitting in the bamboo pavilion, felt a little emotional. He thought back to the days when he was alone with Baisuzhen. At that time there were only the 2 of them here and Baisuzhen would play the zither every day. Now things were the same, but people had changed. The past could not be kept and there were many more things to worry about. Knowing that his 2 disciples had broken through to the foundation building realm, Yu Qianzhou was very happy. Zhang Peng's innate spiritual root was indeed powerful. Although he was a late cultivator, he had still caught up to Hong Qi. After a moment of happiness, he asked, "What techniques have you been cultivating?" The 2 disciples looked at each other respectfully. Hong Qi bowed and said, "Master, after junior brother and I broke through to the foundation building realm, we did not cultivate any techniques. Chief Instructor Guan said that you should be the one to teach us the techniques we should cultivate. No one else has the right to teach us any techniques." Now Hong Qi was already a young man. Although he was younger than Zhang Ping, he was the first to enter the sect, so he had the advantage of his senior brother. Yu Qianzhou nodded and smiled. He stood up and walked out of the bamboo pavilion. He paced around the courtyard, deep in thought. The two disciples, one tall and one short, followed behind him quietly, not daring to disturb him. After some time, Yu Qianzhou took out 2 jade archives and copied a set of incantations on the spot. He turned around and handed them to Miao Yi and Miao Yi respectively, saying, "This is a set of sword incantations called the Guiyuan sword incantation. When cultivated to a high level, you can control 10,000 swords at the same time to subdue your enemies. After memorizing the technique, destroy the jade archives immediately. You are not to teach it to anyone without permission. Your disciples will remember." "Thank you, Master." The two of them took the jade archives excitedly. They had finally obtained the cultivation method they wanted to cultivate. Naturally, they were happy. Yu Qianzhou suddenly flicked his sleeve, and a group of cold lights flew out from his storage pouch. In the blink of an eye, they flew into the bamboo forest, moving as fast as lightning. Despite their speed, they didn't touch a single bamboo. The two of them were dazzled by this sight. After the cold lights scattered for a while, they all flew back with a xiao xiao sound and inserted themselves in 2 rows on the left and right of the two of them. After some calculation, there were 10 on each side. Yu Qianzhou turned around and said with a smile, "What I used just now was the Guiyuan sword technique. Both of you can keep 10 of these 20 flying swords for your cultivation." After the two disciples thanked him, he said, "There is a tomb behind the bamboo house, and the person buried inside is also your patriarch. Although he didn't teach me anything, he guided me into the cultivation world. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. If there are weeds growing on my grave, you should be diligent in pulling them out. Take it as filial piety on behalf of your master. Your disciples will remember." The two of them bowed again. "Your master has many things on hand, and it's impossible for me to stay in Utopia every day. However, from today onwards, I will use my divine sense to contact the two of you from time to time. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me. There are many cultivation methods hidden in the military camp, and I've collected them all. When you have the time, you should go and take a look. It'll be beneficial for your cultivation. If you need anything, you can ask Instructor Guan to help you." After saying this, Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, "All right, I won't say much. Cultivate diligently, and I hope that one day, you'll be able to lend me a hand." He did not say much, nor did he give the two disciples a chance to bid farewell. He suddenly disappeared, causing Hong Qi and Zhang Ping to look at each other in dismay. Yu Qianzhou teleported to Guan Yu's side in the bamboo forest. He looked at Xue Qingkong, who was wandering in the distance, and said to Guan Yu, "Your subordinate Gu Qingyun is quite smart. There's no need for him to stay in the military camp anymore. Transfer him here as well. Let him consume the limit-breaking pill with my two disciples and help them improve their cultivation as soon as possible." "Got it." Guan Yu nodded. He was already used to his sudden appearance. As they spoke, they saw Yu Qianzhou slowly taking out a set of clothes to change into. In the blink of an eye, a servant in black clothes and a small hat appeared before him. He waved at him and disappeared. Guan Yu smiled bitterly. He really did not know what this guy was up to. In the small courtyard behind the National Pillar General's residence, as soon as Yu Qianzhou appeared, he saw Shi Xiaotian sitting cross-legged in the main hall. He was really diligent. Not wanting to startle him, Xiaoqun quietly walked out. With his current cultivation, he was much higher than Shi Xiaotian. If he did not want Shi Xiaotian to notice him, Shi Xiaotian would not be able to notice him. From the back garden to the front garden of the general's mansion, a group of busy servants once again saw the servant who was secretly spreading praises in the mansion and came and went freely. Yu Qianzhou was dressed like a servant. He ignored the other servants and swaggered on his own path, letting others secretly talk about him. However, a pregnant woman in front of him attracted his attention. She was holding her stomach with both hands and was being supported by another woman for a stroll. The pregnant woman was Bao Wanshi, and the one supporting her was Si Tuhui. The two women turned around slowly and happened to see the smiling Yu Qianzhou. The two women were startled. Yu Qianzhou quickly walked over and bowed, "Greetings to the two young madams." When he raised his head, he added softly, "Bao Wanshi, I haven't seen you for a while. How did your stomach get big because of Shi Yutian? I will definitely help you teach him a lesson the next time I see him." He swaggered away after saying this. Si Tuhui covered her mouth and chuckled. Bao Wanshi was ashamed and angry, but she did not dare to say anything. After leaving the general's residence, he bought a few sugarcane on the way to the back door of Wanhua Tower. After knocking on the door, a servant led him in. He swaggered to the small courtyard with ease. The sound of the zither coming from upstairs was a little messy. Xianxia was also a person who knew the zither. He immediately heard that something was wrong. Just as he was puzzled, the sound of the zither stopped. The Enchantress of 100 Charms appeared at the window and looked at him with a smile. Master's wife. Xianxia smiled and bowed downstairs. His smile was a little awkward. He felt a little guilty every time he came. He did not know what he was worried about. When he went upstairs and pushed the door open, he saw the Enchantress of 100 Charms sitting on a chair. She crossed her dazzling white legs and said in a sweet voice, "What a rare guest. I haven't seen you for a long time. Have you forgotten about me, Master's wife?" "How would I dare? How would I dare? Disciple is here to visit Master's wife." Xianxia smiled apologetically. "You bastard, where have you been all this time? I almost sent people to search the entire Wuxia Empire, but I did not see your shadow. You're really good at hiding. Tell me the truth. Where have you been hiding?" The Enchantress of 100 Charms asked with a smile. However, the way she asked made people's imagination run wild. "Looking for me?" Xianxia was stunned. He had always been the one looking for her. This was the first time he heard that she took the initiative to look for him. He could not help but ask, "Master's wife, could it be that something happened?" The Enchantress of 100 Charms and the smile on her face disappeared. She said seriously, "Something big might have happened." Chapter 331. What's wrong? Xianxia found a chair and sat down. A few months ago, 8 demonic sects were massacred. Did you do it? 100 Charm Demon Concubine asked. She knew he did it, but she still wanted to confirm it. Xianxia had asked her for information about the sects, so he naturally didn't plan on hiding it from her. He nodded and said, "I brought people to do it. What's wrong? Did I mess things up?" 100 Charm Demon Concubine gave him a deep look and said, "You didn't do anything wrong. The 10,000 demons' plan to take over the Yen father and son was destroyed by you. 8 sects were massacred in a row, and the hero caused the entire demonic path to panic. Everyone was worried that they would be the 9th sect, so the entire demonic path put pressure on the 10,000 demons. No matter how strong the 10,000 demons were, they couldn't go against the demonic path. Even if they obtained the Yen father and son's strength, they would lose even more. The 10,000 demons couldn't withstand the pressure and finally led the demonic path and righteous path to attack. The Yen father and son were in imminent danger, but who knew that someone would help them?" Hearing this, Xianxia relaxed. He didn't want the Yen father and son to be exterminated so quickly. His plan was that the Yen father and son's strength couldn't be exterminated, but they couldn't be exterminated. If the righteous path wanted to watch the demonic path attack, then he would think of a way to provoke them. On the other hand, if the demonic path didn't do anything, then he would provoke them, just like last time when he destroyed the 8 demonic sections. If the Yen father and son couldn't withstand it, then that wouldn't do. He would send out troops to help and drag the demonic path and righteous path down. It also wouldn't do if the Yen father and son were too strong. Then he would help the demonic path and righteous path suppress them. But the last possibility was a bit small. The Yen father and son's strength still didn't have the strength to win against the demonic path and righteous path. In short, whoever was lazy and didn't do anything, he would whip them in the back. And whichever side couldn't take it, he would help that side. He would do his best to make the war last as long as possible. Everyone would be in a deadlock like this. Once his strength had increased, he would come out to fish in troubled waters. But, is there anyone else who has the same plan as me? Damn it, this is too treacherous. Xianxia frowned. Who helped the Yen father and son? So you still don't know? The Allure Beauty shook her head. She frowned and slowly said, nearly 100 experts of the crossing tribulation stage suddenly appeared in the cultivation world. Among them, there are quite a few who are at the final stage of the crossing tribulation stage. The righteous and devil Dao had just attacked the island where the Yen father and son were hiding when this group of experts seemed to descend from the heavens, defeating their combined attack in one fell swoop. The strangest thing was that even though there were so many experts, no one recognized them. It was as if they had never appeared in the cultivation world of the Wuxia Empire. At that time, I even suspected that it was the people behind you. Cough cough. Xianxia coughed and awkwardly said, Master's wife, you are too imaginative. The Yen father and son wanted to skin me alive. Why would I help them? The Allure Beauty pondered and said, I also don't think so. While everyone was trying to guess the identity of those people, Zhou Xian of the 10,000 demons suddenly remembered the identity of one of the experts at the final stage of the crossing tribulation stage. Xianxia narrowed his eyes and asked, who are they? Zhou Xian had traveled to the Dirong Empire outside of the Wuxia Empire in his early years. There is a famous imperial advisor in the Dirong Empire. It is said that his cultivation is very high. Zhou Xian met him by chance. After so many years he almost forgot about this person. Now he recognized that the expert at the final stage of the crossing tribulation stage was that imperial advisor Dirong. The Allure Beauty said. Xianxia was surprised. So, the Yen father and son have colluded with the foreign cultivation world? That can't be right. Didn't the cultivation world of the various countries make an agreement that no one is allowed to trespass into the territories of other countries? Otherwise, the various countries will join forces to punish them. There was indeed such an agreement. If it was just the Dirong Empire, it would not be a big deal. However, because Zhou Xian recognized the imperial preceptor, everyone discovered some clues from the clothes of the experts. They were wearing the clothes of foreign countries. These people were obviously from the allied forces of the various countries. Think about it, if the various countries all violated the agreement, then who would be afraid of the agreement? Then what's the use of this agreement? The Allure Beauty said. How could this be? Xianxia said absent-mindedly. He had not expected something like this to happen, making it difficult for him to carry out his plan. He had finally managed to obtain the limit-breaking pill and was just about to run out and act arrogantly. Unexpectedly, someone completely unrelated to him had come to join in the fun. Truly, the plan could not keep up with the unexpected. Xianxia sighed. Master's wife, why did those people come at this time? Do you know what their purpose is? We still don't know what they want, but the entire cultivation world of China is on alert. This is not a local fight but an invasion by foreign enemies. The Orthodox Dao and the Devil Dao have put aside their prejudice and are discussing fervently. They are preparing to form an alliance to defend against the foreign enemies. At this point, the Allure Beauty stood up. Although her clothes were hot and seductive, she didn't look seductive at all. She looked out of the window and said in a sonorous voice, if a war really breaks out and the situation is disadvantageous to the cultivation world of China, the Enchanted Palace will no longer hide our power. We will do our best to defend against the foreign enemies together with the Orthodox Dao and the Devil Dao. Although I, the Allure Beauty, am a woman, I will not give up my duty. Xianxia looked at her and was stunned for a while. Then he slowly nodded. Yes. No matter how our brothers quarrel, it is still a matter of our own family. Even if the bones are broken, the tendons are still connected. Even if we break up the family, we will still have the same surname. Other people come to meddle. Their reasons are nice to hear, saying that they are helping someone, but they all have ulterior motives. Who knows what they are planning? Even if you use your butt to think, you can be sure that they are harming others to benefit themselves. That's right, Master's wife. Are there any movements from those people? After they made their move, they didn't make any movements. It was as if they were worried about something. If I didn't guess wrong. The Allure Beauty turned and looked at Xianxia. It could be because of you. Because of me? How is that possible? Xianxia was stunned. He stood up and waved his hands. Master's wife, I really have nothing to do with those people. If you don't believe me, I can swear to the heavens. I didn't say that it has something to do with you. It has something to do with the power behind you. The Allure Beauty explained. Think about it. When it comes to the matter of heroes, the Yen father and son know that they are fakes. But who are the real heroes? There is an unknown power hidden in the Chinese cultivation world. Since those outsiders have colluded with the Yen father and son, they must have found out the truth from the father and son's mouths. Sometimes the power that is exposed is not scary. What is scary is the hidden and unknown power. Occasionally it is ferocious, but it is hard to see clearly. This kind of power is often the most unsettling, making people not dare to act blindly without thinking. Xianxia rubbed his nose and smiled. Is the power behind me really as scary as Master's wife says? To be able to loot the Daoist sect's spirit stone mine without anyone knowing and destroy 8 demonic sects in a day. Not to mention, there is an expert at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage. Even if they are not scary, they are not weak. The temptress stared at him with burning eyes and said, "Since you call me master's wife, don't blame me for saying some harsh words. I don't care who's behind you. If the Wuxia cultivation world is in trouble, I won't ask you to pull them out to help, but you're not allowed to be enemies with the Wuxia cultivation world. Otherwise, don't blame me for not giving Xianxia face. Even if I can't kill you, I'll definitely reveal your background. Think about the consequences." Threatening me? Xianxia's mouth opened slightly. He was speechless. Chapter 332. Her slender legs, delicate white feet and crystal round toenails were well groomed. Her feet were almost flawless. The temptress was used to stepping on the smooth mahogany floor barefooted. Usually, no one would disturb her in the attic, so it was harmless for her to do so. However, her cheap disciple was a little fascinated by her. At the very least, Xianxia was currently staring at her jade-like feet. The temptress of 100 charms gently tugged at the red muslin that was trailing behind her thighs and silently covered her half-naked thighs. The red muslin also obscured her jade-like feet. What a beautiful and delicate pair of beautiful feet. They were born with them. Xianxia sighed in his heart. Usually, a woman with naturally flawless feet would be known as a beauty without looking at her face. On the other hand, if a woman had a beautiful face but mediocre feet, she would either look good with makeup or take good care of her body. Even worse, she would have gone for plastic surgery. True beauties usually had the same head and feet. A woman's appearance could be judged 90% by her feet. This was the experience he had gained from countless experiences in his previous life. With the red gauze blocked, Xianxia coughed and casually found a topic to cover up the awkwardness. He asked, "Master's wife, why did those people come? Can't be for no reason, right? China is the birthplace of the world of cultivation. Most of those cultivators who were scattered in other countries were expelled because they violated the common commandments. After a long time, they gradually became famous in other countries. In the past, there were some who thought that they had achieved great cultivation and came back to seek revenge and cause trouble. However, our China's cultivation world is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. How could we let them do as they pleased? They were either killed or driven back. However, this time I'm afraid they had planned it for a long time. Otherwise, cultivators from other countries wouldn't have come together." Speaking up to this point, the temptress asked, "Do you know why those people were expelled?" Xianxia shook his head and said, "I usually don't care about this and I've never heard anyone mention it. I don't know. The reason why they were banished was because they coveted the riches and splendor of the world and interfered excessively in the affairs of the secular world. The common commandment of the Wuxia cultivation world is not to interfere in worldly affairs at will. However, most of those who have been expelled refuse to mend their ways despite repeated admonitions. They are still the same in foreign countries. Not only do they confuse mortals and tell them that they are myths, but they also use the pretense of recruiting believers. They say that they are preaching the law, but in fact, it is for their own enjoyment. But because they were in other countries, no one cared about them. Who would have thought that they'd become so powerful that they'd want to attack the Chinese cultivation world? So they're here for revenge?" Xianxia asked. "It shouldn't be revenge. Those people who were banished have probably all died long ago. The practice of banishing people who violated the commandments was something that had happened a long time ago. In the past, those who were banished would always come back to cause trouble. So now, people who were found to have violated the commandments were usually killed. If the people who came this time were related to those people from before, they would only be their disciples and grand-disciples. The biggest possibility is that they will return to China to fight for resources," 100 Charm Beauty said. "What resources?" Xianxia asked curiously. He thought to himself, "If it's something good, I will also get my hands on it." China has a vast territory and a large population. For the cultivation sects, this is a resource. 100 Charm Beauty said, "Some people say that the Wuxia Empire has a treasure that was lost in the ancient times. They are here to find such a treasure." "A treasure from the ancient times? What is it?" Xianxia's eyes lit up again. He was very interested in treasures. "I'm not sure." 100 Charm Beauty shook her head and said, "I heard that it's a treasure that can make one a god. The ancient war broke out because of this treasure. It was too long ago and I'm afraid there are only a few people who know the details. Could it be the star pearl that Bai Changqun mentioned?" Xianxia thought to himself. The enchantress of 100 Charms frowned slightly and walked to the window with her bare feet. She looked a little worried. Xianxia never would have thought that this kind of woman would love her country to such a degree. It was rare for a woman to be like this, and he admired her from the bottom of his heart. His fantasies towards her lessened, and a sense of respect arose within him. He followed her to the window and comforted her. "Master's wife, don't worry. It's just a group of tribulation passing stage cultivators. You said that the cultivation world of our Wuxia empire is full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. They won't be able to cause any trouble. If it's just this, it won't be difficult to deal with them. The Fuxian Island and the 10,000 demons aren't weak either. I'm just afraid that they have more people. Now that both sides haven't made a move, let's wait and see what happens in the future. What about you?" 100 Charm Beauty had a trace of worry on her face. When she turned around, it turned into a charming smile and asked, "Little fox, you've been elusive for a long time. What are you doing? Are you up to something again? Can you tell me a little?" When he got closer, the beauty's body fragrance made him take a deep breath. Xianxia pretended to be careless and took a few steps back. He chuckled and said, "It seems like Master's wife is prejudiced against me. I've always been honest and dutiful. What can I do? It's just that Master is watching me tightly and it's hard for me to come out and walk around." "Get lost. You're honest? Then there won't be any honest people in this world." 100 Charm Beauty suddenly said in surprise, "Why? You're still in contact with Guan Weiwu from the Fuxian Island." It means, Master's wife misunderstood again. Xianxia waved his hand and interrupted, "Since the Fuxian Island expelled me from the sect, they wouldn't put me in their eyes. I have nothing to do with Guan Weiwu. Master's wife, please don't associate me with him in the future." At the mention of Guan Weiwu, his face turned ugly. Back then when he was questioned, he really wanted that master to speak up for him. But in the face of his almost begging gaze, Guan Weiwu remained silent, and on the spot his heart was almost completely broken, making him feel cold and sad. From that moment on, he made up his mind that there was no longer any relationship between them. He seemed to be a strong person, but because of something that others might not care about, he was really hurt. Therefore he refused to associate him with Guan Weiwu. 100 Charm Beauty could see that he really couldn't have any relationship with Guan Weiwu. She chuckled and said, "It seems like I've said too much. But it's strange. Could it be that you've acknowledged a third master? What I'm doing is considered treason in the cultivation world, right?" He smiled non-committally, which could be considered as a disguised admission. The smile on 100 Charm Beauty's face twitched. Whether it was the righteous path or the demonic path, changing masters frequently was not something that was liked. No one could guarantee that they wouldn't accept disciples. Who would like their own disciples to acknowledge others as their master? Even if it was their own abandoned disciple. After a long period of time, everyone wouldn't have a good impression of such a person. In fact, everyone would despise such a person. Xianxia sneered and said, "Back then someone in the Wu clan scolded me as the scum of the cultivation world. I think Master's wife also feels that my actions are shameful. But it doesn't matter. I am a thick-skinned person. If Master's wife doesn't like it, you can say whatever you want. This reputation is indeed not good. You can say it to me and I naturally won't mind. But I advise you to not mention your master in front of others. It won't be beneficial for you to walk in the cultivation world in the future. After all, you have offended some people. In the past, when you acknowledged a second master in the supporting Immortal Island, everyone didn't say anything out of consideration for the supporting Immortal Island. But now that you don't have the protection of the supporting Immortal Island, and you acknowledged a third master, it is inevitable that someone will make things difficult for you. Therefore, if you can avoid mentioning your master, try your best not to mention it." 100 Charm Beauty's words were from the bottom of her heart. "Some people that I have offended?" Xianxia let out a cold snort, and spoke with a prideful expression. "My master's cultivation is exceedingly profound and unfathomable. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he is unrivaled in the world. Just based on them, they aren't even fit to carry my master's shoes, let alone know about an expert like my master." Such an arrogant tone instantly made the 100 Charm Beauty's eyes lit up. "Unrivaled in the world? Kid, you can't casually wear this hat. Are you bragging? There might be many experts in the world, but no one dares to say that they are unrivaled in the world. I don't dare to say that I have seen all the experts in the cultivation world, but I have at least heard of the famous ones. Why don't you tell me your master's name? Let me see who is able to be crowned with the hat of unrivaled in the world. Since Yu Qianzhou had mentioned his master, he had a plan in his heart to reveal some information. Mainly, he wanted to ease her heart at this time. Secondly, he wanted to intimidate her and make her feel that he had a powerful background so that she wouldn't dare to act blindly without thinking. Otherwise, he was afraid that with her strong patriotism, she would contribute all her hidden forces to fight against foreign enemies at the slightest sign of trouble. Then how would he be able to grasp the situation of the cultivation world at any time? Moreover, this woman actually said words that revealed his background. This was clearly a threat. Didn't you want to use psychological methods to get information from me? Then let's see who is threatening who now. Chapter 333. Mistress, why do you have to know my master's name? Although my master has a high cultivation base, he is not well known in the cultivation world. Not many people know about him. Even if I told you, you would not have heard of him. There is really no need to tell me. Yu Qianzhou smiled faintly. In his heart he spat, Mistress doesn't know my master's name? What kind of logic is that? Why do I feel that saying this is so awkward? Damn it. He let old man Bai take advantage of him. He had 3 masters and a mistress. Talking about his master in front of his mistress was not a good match. The allure temptress glared at him and shouted, Little fox, cut the crap. No matter how high your cultivation base is, can it be higher than the final phase of the god's punishment? Even if your master is a reclusive master, I don't believe that he has never been in the cultivation world. If he is as powerful as you say, how could he be unknown? I've been in charge of a sect for many years. As long as it's an expert that's still alive in this world, I'll be able to tell you 1, 2, 3 of them. Mistress, can I not say it? Just pretend that I am talking nonsense. Yu Qianzhou acted like he was in a dilemma. Yo, are you making fun of mistress? The allure temptress smiled and walked closer. She seemed to be up to no good. Smiling, she said, Little fox, today you have to tell me whether you want to or not. If you dare to lie to me, I will seal your cultivation and strip you naked. I will let the ladies of the 10,000 flower house keep you for 10 days to half a month and let you go after squeezing you dry. This mistress is so strong. Yu Qianzhou pushed his palms forward and said awkwardly, Master's wife, please wait. How could disciple dare to deceive master's wife? It's truly because my master hasn't met an opponent that can defeat him since 2,000 years ago. He wanted to be defeated, yet he couldn't. In his loneliness he lived in seclusion until now. Think about it, how would master's wife know about him? The temptress was stunned on the spot when she heard this. She blinked her eyes and said doubtfully, Little fox, are you talking nonsense? Are you confused by the ladies of Myriad Flower Brothel, or did I hear it wrong? Are you saying that your master has lived for more than 2,000 years? Mistress. Yu Qianzhou let out a long cry and said with a bitter smile, You didn't hear wrongly. My master is indeed more than 2,000 years old. Just like you said, there are many hidden dragons and crouching tigers in the cultivation world, but the so-called final stage of passing tribulation is really not a master. At least in the eyes of my master and the others, they are really not a master. More than 2,000 years old, more than 2,000 years old. What kind of cultivation can live for more than 2,000 years? Could it be the legendary soul formation stage? The muttering 100 charms beauty's body suddenly shook, and her pretty face became somewhat pale as she thought of that impossible possibility. She bit her lips and looked at Yu Qianzhou in bewilderment. Little fox, could it be that your master's cultivation has already reached the legendary soul formation stage? Yu Qianzhou solemnly cupped his fist and said, My master's cultivation has already reached the peak of the final stage of soul formation. For him, becoming an immortal is only a step away. His words were quite frightening. The allure temptress's alluring red lips were slightly open, and she was a bit dumbfounded. After a while she anxiously asked, You just mentioned your master and the others. Could it be that there are more than one soul formation stage like your master? Yu Qianzhou nodded and said, Of course there are many, but at their cultivation level, almost all of them concentrate on cultivation and don't care about worldly affairs. That's why very few people in the cultivation world know about them. The expression on the allure temptress's face changed and no one knew what she was thinking. After some thought she said, 2,000 years is not a short time, but it's not a long time either. With your master's cultivation level, he must not be a nobody 2,000 years ago. Why don't you tell me your master's name? Maybe I've seen your master's name in some ancient records. It's really not convenient to tell you my master's name, and besides. Xianxia shook his head and bitterly smiled. Besides, my master really didn't leave any big name in the cultivation world 2,000 years ago. He has always been rather low-key. Huh. The allure enchantress suddenly laughed. She pointed at Xianxia and scolded, "You're really a little fox. I was almost fooled by you. Fortunately, I know that you're not telling the truth. You said that your master is invincible and is at the soul formation stage, but you said he is at the peak of the soul formation stage. Even if what you said is true, you actually dare to say that there are many soul formation stage cultivators in this world? Do you think you can find a lot of soul formation stage cultivators in the market? You want to lie to me, but you don't even know how to prepare a draft. I asked you to tell me your master's name to test you, but you've always been secretive. Little fox, you really are not a good thing." Xianxia was completely speechless. He really couldn't understand. He had told a lot of lies, but some people believed him, but no one believed him when he told the truth. Who could he tell this to? I can't be too honest in the future. A smile gradually appeared on Xianxia's face, but it was the kind that looked at an idiot. He sneered and said, "In this world, the hearts of the people are higher than the sky. It's understandable that you don't want to be with ordinary people. Master's wife forced me, so I said it. Since you don't believe me, then forget it. Just pretend I never said it. But fortunately, a few people from a certain sect have seen it and know that I'm not lying." The allure beauty couldn't smile anymore and asked with a stiff expression, "Which sect have seen it?" Xianxia said indifferently, "Majiogu of supporting Immortal Island, together with 4 late-stage tribulation transcendence consecrators, as well as Dongfang Chang'ao and a group of elders, accidentally provoked a soul formation cultivator. In the end, they didn't even see the person's face, but they were all seriously injured by that person's divine sense. They were so scared that they fled in panic. Fortunately, that soul formation cultivator showed mercy. Otherwise, none of them would have been able to return to supporting Immortal Island alive. This matter isn't a secret among the upper echelons of supporting Immortal Island. Maybe the upper echelons of the top 3 sects also know some inside information, but they're just hiding it from the other sections. Is what you said true?" The allure beauty cried out in surprise. Using divine sense to seriously injure 5 late-stage tribulation transcendence experts, this cultivation was a bit too terrifying. How could she not be shocked? With Master's ability to gather information, it shouldn't be difficult for you to investigate. He bowed and said, "Thank you, Master's wife, for informing me of the current situation in the cultivation world. Disciple still has important matters to attend to and will visit again in the future." He was about to leave. "Wait. I still have something to ask." The allure beauty stopped him and asked doubtfully, "This is something only the upper echelons of the top sects know about. How do you know?" She didn't know that when the incident happened, Xianxia was still on supporting Immortal Island. Xianxia smiled and said, "It's a coincidence. The person who injured them was my master. If master has no other questions, disciple will take his leave." "Your master?" "Wait." The allure beauty stopped him again in surprise and put on a charming smile. She said, "I don't dare to provoke a soul formation cultivator, but it's not easy to meet a soul formation disciple, so I naturally have to ask for some advice. I want to see what peerless skills you've learned from a soul formation cultivator." Faster the Xianxia raised his eyebrows. Did this woman want to fall out with him? Before he could say what he wanted to say, he saw the allure beauty's figure flash and the room was filled with her. She was wrapped in red gauze and surrounded him in all kinds of positions. Chapter 334. The reason why the Enchanted Illusion Palace was called the Enchanted Illusion Palace was that there was a set of famous phantom great technique in the cultivation world. It was said that when cultivated to the extreme, it could transform into thousands of real bodies, making it difficult to distinguish the real from the fake. It was a very unique set of magic arts. And as the current palace master of the Enchanted Illusion Palace, the phantom great techniques cultivation was naturally not weak. Hee charming laughter echoed in every corner of the room. The pink phantom was everywhere, flirtatious, sweet and charming, disturbing people's ears and eyes, making people feel as if they were falling into a gentle land. Xianxia's eyes slightly narrowed. In his slender eyes there was a sharp killing intent. In front of him, there were hundreds of enchanted illusion palaces phantoms, all smiling at him. He couldn't tell which one was the real enchanted illusion palace's real body. Master's wife, what do you mean? Yu Qianqiu vigilantly looked around, his tone was a bit cold. Little fox, I don't mean anything else. I just want to see what peerless skills you have learned. The phantoms kept disappearing and appearing, always maintaining 100. The strangest thing was that the hundreds of phantoms actually spoke at the same time, their voices coming from all directions, as if they were all the enchanted illusion palace's real body. But it was impossible for there to be hundreds of people who looked exactly the same. There was only one real body and the rest were all phantoms. Yu Qianqiu carefully looked around. Although the enchanted illusion palace said it lightly, he didn't dare to relax. If the other party had evil intentions, wouldn't he die unjustly? His divine sense immediately filled the whole room, which was the real body and which were the phantoms he could easily find out. However, how could the phantom great technique be so easily seen through? Under his divine sense, he found that every phantom could resist the detection of his divine sense, making it impossible to distinguish the real from the fake. The hundreds of charming phantoms giggled and said, "Little fox, do you really think my enchanted illusion palace's phantom great technique is a street performance? You actually used divine sense to detect? This palace's layers of phantoms will not let you easily see through the real body without the same or higher cultivation as this palace." Yu Qianqiu sneered, "I don't care how many phantoms you have, but I don't feel safe right now. Mistress, if you don't stop, don't blame me for being impolite. I'll burn down your 10,000 flower house. At that time, let's see if you can create illusions in the fire." The allure enchantress couldn't laugh anymore. Yu Qianqiu had become famous after the battle outside the 100 Flowers Valley, and he had relied on the world-famous star flame fire technique. Although she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, the news she had received had confirmed the terrifying power of the monstrous flames. Even the Deluo sect leader's son had been killed, and the sect's elder Zhou Xian had to retreat. One could imagine how fierce this little fox's fire technique was. This secluded loft was made of pure wood, so how could it withstand such a fierce flame? The inside of the room was suddenly dyed a cyan color. She saw Yu Qianqiu raise a finger, and there was a cyan flame the size of a candle dancing on it. However, it was this small flame that turned everything in the room a demonic cyan color. "If you don't stop, it seems that mistress plans on rebuilding the 10,000 flower house." Yu Qianqiu sneered, and that cyan flame instantly burst out with a heart-palpitating temperature. The vermilion paint on the furniture quickly melted, and the entire room was immediately filled with the smell of burning wood. If the temperature was just a bit higher, the entire building would be turned into a sea of fire. Cyan-colored flame. The allure enchantress's pupils shrank. There was actually a cyan-colored flame in this world. Could it be some kind of demonic flame? She had previously received news that Yu Qianqiu's fire technique could release a demonic red flame with an extremely high temperature, but this flame was a demonic cyan color. Although the color was different, she could feel the terrifying power contained in that cyan flame. The 100 phantoms in the room quickly merged into one, and the allure enchantress appeared in front of Yu Qianqiu with a face full of anger. She pointed her finger and shouted, "Little fox, you're crazy. If this fire starts, wouldn't my 10,000 flower house be exposed to the entire capital? When that time comes, how would I be able to hide here?" Yu Qianqiu was startled. "Damn it. You're the one who wants to make a move, so do you think I'll just sit and wait for death?" He cursed in his heart, but he had already retracted that cyan flame into his body. It seemed that this woman really wanted to exchange pointers. The high temperature that was emitted in the room actually followed the cyan flame and entered Yu Qianqiu's body. The room instantly recovered its coolness. The enchantress of 100 charms looked around. Seeing that there was no damage, she suddenly shouted again, "Today this old lady must exchange pointers with you. If you dare to use fire spells again or damage a table or chair, this old lady will swallow you alive." As she said that, the phantoms rose again, and the allure enchantresses appeared from all directions. They all stretched out their claws. She no longer said anything and attacked without any politeness. Yu Qianqiu almost fainted. This bitch's cultivation was originally higher than mine. Since it was a spar, she still restricted me from using fire techniques. How could you say that? The other party had already made a move, so he didn't have much time to think. Yu Qianqiu put his palms together and patted his chest. A blue wave rushed out, bringing with it a dense cold air. Hundreds of ice thorns shot out from the blue wave in an instant, and met the hundreds of Allure Enchantress's claws. Damn it. Fortunately, I've cultivated water techniques. You won't let me use fire, but I'll use water. There was no need to mention how depressed Yu Qianqiu was. If it wasn't for the fact that he still had some use for this 10,000 flower house, with his temper, he would have burned it down long ago. At this moment he couldn't tell which was the real body of the Allure Enchantresses, so he simply released a group of ice thorns to deal with them together. What is this? The Allure Enchantress jumped in fright. The ice thorns were smashed into pieces by her claws. The hundreds of phantoms once again merged into one, revealing the real body. However, the ice thorns that were attacking the other phantoms whistled through the air. It seemed that they were going to tear the house down. The Allure Enchantress shouted, "Stop!" Before she could finish, the surging water rushed over and drowned her. A bubble protected the Allure Enchantress. It was her protective aura, otherwise she would have taken a good bath. The hundreds of ice thorns seemed to have a telepathic connection. Just as they were about to pierce the house, they all flew back and returned to the blue wave. Yu Qianqiu didn't want to tear down her house, so he naturally wouldn't cause any damage. Moreover, this mistress had already warned him. Since she wasn't really going to fall out with him, it was better not to provoke this shrew. In an instant the whole room was filled with water. All the furniture that could float in the room floated slowly in the water. If one looked from the outside, one could see that not a single drop of water seeped out of the house. The windows were sealed by a pool of water and no water flowed out. The Allure Enchantress who was inside the protective aura was extremely astonished. She looked left and right at this room that had already become a world of water. She really couldn't imagine how a person's body could release so much water. Looking at the world outside the window through the water, it was crystal clear and had a unique flavor. She didn't know if it was clean to use for bathing. Usually when women saw water, their thoughts were different from men's. Women thought about whether it was clean and whether they could bathe. Only when they were really thirsty would they consider the problem of drinking. Men, on the other hand, would mostly consider whether it was clean and whether they could drink it. Of course, empress-like hypocrites probably had the same thoughts as women, and had nothing to do with whether they liked to be clean or not. The Allure Enchantress looked at Yu Qianqiu, who was leisurely and contented in the water. She said with love and hate, "Damn you, is this a water spell? So not only do you cultivate fire spells, you also cultivate water spells. Could this be the ability that your soul formation master taught you?" Yu Qianqiu smiled noncommittally. He didn't say yes nor did he say no. He slowly floated in the water. One of his hands was raised in front of his chest. His thumb pressed against the middle finger that was bent towards the center of his palm. He made a hand seal and a spherical space formed around him. Suddenly he shouted, "Seal." The whole house seemed to shake along with his shout. The floor and walls of the room made a light creaking sound. The water in the room instantly turned into ice. A block of ice the size of a room suddenly formed just like that. The room immediately became a crystal-like world. The Allure Enchantress was not in the mood to appreciate it. She retracted her protective aura and felt a dense cold air rushing towards her. She used her hand to touch the curved surface of the ice that trapped her. She was shocked and said, "What a domineering spell. It can actually freeze such a big block of ice in an instant." As she said this, she looked at Yu Qianqiu cautiously and shouted, "Little fox, what are you trying to do?" "Mistress, don't misunderstand. This small amount of ice naturally can't trap Mistress. It's just that Mistress is naturally afraid of heat and wears so little clothes for a long time. I specially came to help Mistress cool down for a while. Disciple still has some matters to attend to and can't stay for long. I will disturb you again in the future. Farewell." Yu Qianqiu bowed and said with a faint smile. He raised his hand and shot out a green fire dragon. A narrow ice path immediately opened up in the direction of the door. He stepped on the ice wall and his whole body slid out of the door. A black shadow flashed out of the room, did a few somersaults in the air and landed steadily on the ground. Yu Qianqiu walked out of the room in a swaying manner. He could vaguely hear the voice of the Enchantress of 100 Charms scolding him, "Little fox, come back here for me and help me melt this ice." He didn't have much time to waste with this mistress, so he turned a deaf ear to it. The Allure Enchantress released her divine sense and naturally discovered that Yu Qianqiu had walked far away. She was so angry that she gnashed her teeth. With her cultivation, this little bit of ice would not be able to trap her. She could completely shatter it and escape. However, the 10,000 flower pavilion was located in the bustling city of the capital. Such a big movement would definitely attract attention. Moreover, if she did that, the pavilion would be completely destroyed. Looks like this little fox had already calculated this beforehand. Don't tell me that you can't wait to avoid me when you see me. The allure enchantress bit her red lips and a strand of red silk on her shoulder floated up. It rapidly struck the ice surface and in a short period of time, a 2 to 3 meter long passageway was created. The allure enchantress's figure flashed and she flew from this passageway to the passageway that Xianxia had created. She then bent her waist and flew out of the pavilion. The allure enchantress angrily looked around but she couldn't even see a shadow of Xianxia. She then looked at the frozen pavilion and was slightly stunned. She saw that on the roof of the pavilion, under the sunlight, there was actually a beautiful rainbow that just happened to envelop the pavilion. She couldn't take her eyes off it and the anger on her face turned into a gentleness that was unique to a woman. The next day when she came back to the pavilion she immediately gnashed her teeth in hatred. This pavilion had been roasted by Xianxia's fire, blistered and frozen. After the ice melted, how could it still be livable? It had to be renovated. Chapter 335. When he returned to the National Pillar General's residence, he saw Zhou Xian waiting for him with a face full of joy. Xianxia looked back and saw passers-by passing by from time to time. He glared at Zhou Xian and walked over to bow. Third young master. Zhou Xian came to his senses and knew that he didn't want to be ostentatious in a crowded place. He immediately acted like a young master and nodded. Follow me. The two of them walked to the back garden. As they walked, Zhou Xian asked softly, Boss, I haven't seen you for a long time. Why didn't you tell me that you were coming? I only knew that you were here when I bumped into the two sisters-in-law. The cultivation world hasn't been peaceful recently and I've been busy. I'll be going on a long journey soon, so I came back to settle some miscellaneous matters. I don't know when I'll be back again, Xianxia said. Zhou Xian nodded. Mother heard that you're here and wanted to pay her a visit. There's no need. Send my regards to your mother. As they spoke, the two of them arrived at the back garden. Xianxia suddenly said, I'm going to your father's place soon. Ask your mother and the rest if there's anything they want me to tell your father. It's best if it's a letter so that it's easier to pass on. Don't worry about me. Go ask them now. I can't stay for too long. Got it. Zhou Xian turned and ran. Although he didn't know what his boss was busy with, he knew that it wasn't easy for his boss to come. Xianxia walked into the courtyard alone. When he thought about the cultivation world, he couldn't help but worry about the safety of the family. Zhou Xian's cultivation was only at the late stage of foundation establishment. The old team members sent to protect the family were also at the nascent soul stage. It wasn't a big problem usually, but it was hard to say now. He had to raise their cultivation as soon as possible. His spiritual perception immediately locked onto Qin Feng in Utopia. He saw Qin Feng and Xiao Wanqing fighting for work, nodding and bowing like slaves. How was he asking Xiao Wanqing to take care of his life? He was clearly taking care of Xiao Wanqing's life. Xianxia shook his head and smiled bitterly. He sent a voice transmission. Qin Feng, how many limit-breaking pills did you refine? Give me some first. Boss. Qin Feng was taken aback at first, then awkwardly said, I haven't refined it yet. I'll come back tomorrow. Xiao Wanqing saw him talking to the air and couldn't help but look around blankly. Xianxia's expression immediately darkened. He disappeared from the courtyard and appeared beside the two people from Utopia. Xiao Wanqing saluted with some resentment. Leader. Xianxia nodded and said, Since you're with Qin Feng, then you're family. There's no need to be so polite in the future. Hearing this, Qin Feng was quite satisfied and nodded repeatedly at Xiao Wanqing. Xianxia glanced at him and said expressionlessly, Come with me, I have something to talk to you about. Wanqing, wait for me. I'll be there in a while, Qin Feng said and left with Xianxia. The two of them arrived at Qin Feng's personal alchemy room. Xianxia immediately turned hostile and shouted, Qin Feng, have you been bewitched by women? You're so careless with such an important matter at hand. Don't tell me there won't be time for the two of you to flirt in the future? I'll warn you today. If you abandon your important matters and stay by a woman's skirt all day, I'll immediately chase Xiao Wanqing out of Utopia. The two of you will never be able to see each other again. Ah. Qin Feng was shocked. However, their relationship wasn't ordinary, so he wasn't afraid that Yu Qianqiu would really do that. However, it was hard to say if his boss was ruthless. He sucked up to him and said, "Boss, calm down. I know my mistake. I won't dare to do it again." He understood that Yu Qianqiu was already giving him face by not falling out with Xiao Wanqing and everyone else. Otherwise, with his temper, Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly and didn't say anything else. He walked to the medicine room at the side and took out a few sets of spirit herbs. With a wave of his hand, a nearly transparent green flame ignited, and he threw in the spirit herbs to quickly refine. His proficient refining technique attracted Qin Feng once again. Not long after, a batch of white and 5 batches of purple limit-breaking pills were completed. Yu Qianqiu stored them in his storage bag. Looking at Qin Feng's disappointed expression, he shook his head and instantly disappeared. "Take care, boss." Qin Feng chuckled and waved at the air. Then he exhaled and smiled bitterly. Boss had a lot of things to do. Not only did he have to gather a large number of spirit stones, he also had to run back to refine pills. He really managed his business well. Now that everyone was busy, he seemed like boss was right. He had really been bewitched by women. Qin Feng rubbed his forehead. After coming to his senses, he felt a little ashamed. He turned around and opened the lid of the pill furnace. When Yu Qianqiu returned to the back garden of the general's mansion, Shi Xiaotian was already waiting for him with a few letters in his hands. Seeing him suddenly appear, Shi Xiaotian didn't find it strange at all. He handed the letters over with a smile and said, "I heard that you came back very quickly. Other than mother, big brother and 2 sisters-in-law also wrote letters. There's also one for me. Sorry to trouble you, boss." Yu Qianqiu took the letters and threw them into his storage bag. He jokingly said, "When did you become so polite with me? It's not like it's my personal matter. I'm just thanking you on behalf of my family." Shi Xiaotian smiled. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and took out the white and purple limit-breaking pills. He placed them on the table and said, "Keep the white one for yourself. Give the purple one to the team members who are guarding the general's mansion and Ling Feng and the other 2. I will bring them here as soon as possible. There's no need to gather so many people now. Otherwise, I will go bankrupt." He then told Shi Xiaotian about the effects of the 2 pills and how to consume them. But Shi Xiaotian was surprised. "Since there's such a difference between the 2 pills, why are you giving the purple one to Ling Feng and the other 2? That's not very good. Don't be so long-winded. I know what to do. I won't harm them." Yu Qianqiu took out another storage bag and threw it on the table. He sighed. "I'm so poor. Here are 10 million high-grade spirit stones. You guys can make do with it." Before he finished speaking, his expression changed. "Oh no, Xianping is in danger. Wait for me here." Shi Xiaotian saw that Yu Qianqiu had suddenly disappeared, but he heard his words clearly. His face turned solemn as he muttered, "What danger would Xianping be in?" In the outside world, Yu Qianqiu was still unable to teleport with his cultivation. If he relied on the mysterious effect of the golden bead, as long as there were coordinates in the outside world that he needed, Utopia would be his bridge to any shore. No matter how far the distance was, he would be able to reach it in an instant. After suddenly sensing Xianping's distress signal, Yu Qianqiu immediately returned to Utopia and disappeared again. Speaking of which, Xianping was a man of few words and was too straightforward. To put it bluntly, he was a one-track mind. After separating from Ling Feng and Beizi, he came to a relatively large city in the Wuxia Empire. On the same day, he met a few orphans with spiritual roots. Thinking that he would definitely need a place to stay when there were more people, he couldn't possibly stay in an inn. That would be too conspicuous. Hence, he was in a hurry to find a house to rent. As the saying went, the land and water nurtured the people of the area. The people here were more arrogant. When they heard that Xianping did not have a local accent and saw that he was dressed extravagantly, they asked him, "You don't look like a local. Do you need a house urgently?" Xianping replied honestly, "I need it urgently." Hence there was no problem with renting a house. The price was too high to say anything. Although Xianping was a little slow, he was not an idiot. After all, he had stayed in the capital for a long time and understood the price of goods. How could the rent of such a place be twice as high as in the capital? He discussed with them but to no avail, so he rejected them. In the end, he asked a few houses in a row and found that each house was blacker than the other. It was all because of the landlord at the beginning. The group of landlords worked together to rip him off. Hence he returned to the first house. The landlord was happy and the price was 5 times higher than before. Xianping was furious and almost hit them. However, he was a little stubborn. Thinking of the rules of the cultivation world, he did not make a move in the end. If it was Ling Feng and Beizi, even if they did not do it openly, they would still teach him a lesson in secret. However, if it was the two of them, they would have just thrown money to rent the house right from the start. Sure, Xiaotian had given them a lot of money. Why would a cultivator care about that little bit of money? Then there wouldn't have been anything else. Seeing that Xianping wanted to hit him, the landlord flew into a rage and scolded, "What? You're a foreigner and you want to hit me? I say you're dressed like a dog. Why are you pretending to be rich when you don't have money? You think it's too expensive? There's a run-down temple at the foot of the mountain in the south of the city. If you have the guts, go live there. It's free of charge." Alright, this Xianping was really stubborn. He did not think of any other way and actually went to live in that rundown temple in a fit of anger. After a period of time, the rundown temple had collected hundreds of orphans with spiritual roots. One day, an orphan was playful and sneaked out of the rundown temple. Because it was at the foot of the mountain, the orphan was bitten by a poisonous snake. When Xianping came back, he found that the orphan was deeply poisoned. With his cultivation, he could not completely expel the poison. At this moment, he thought of Yu Qianqiu. Coincidentally, at this crucial moment, 8 people barged into the rundown temple. When they saw the courtyard full of children with spiritual roots, they were all stunned. When they saw that Xianping was in the middle stage of the foundation building realm, they thought that Xianping was sent by some sect to recruit disciples. Hence, without saying a word, one of them asked Xianping to step aside. That person quickly and efficiently saved the child. Xianping was clumsy and did not know how to express his gratitude. He actually took out a handful of golden amber high-grade spirit stones from his storage bag and stuffed them into the hands of the other party to express his gratitude. This time the eyes of the 8 people turned green. Their shifty eyes would glance at Xianping's storage bag from time to time. The consequences of being disloyal at the sight of wealth could be imagined. These 8 people were originally herb-gathering disciples of the Daoist sect. They were the kind of disciples that went around collecting spiritual herbs. After the 8 of them exchanged glances, one of them came out to curry favor with Xianping. He asked which sect Xianping was from and how many people came with him. Xianping, this silly goose, actually said that he was a non-sect itinerant cultivator and that he was alone outside. Although he said that, the 8 people did not believe him. Why would a non-sect itinerant cultivator collect so many children with spiritual roots? Moreover, he was so rich. After a few questions, Xianping saw that a few kind-hearted people who helped him did not believe him. In a moment of desperation, in order to prove himself, he actually said that he was an abandoned disciple of the supporting Immortal Island and that he only succeeded in the foundation-building realm by chance after leaving the island. He was not so stupid that he did not give up on Yu Qianqiu. The herb-gathering disciples of the Daoist sect looked at each other in dismay. They were still somewhat skeptical, but they could not resist the temptation of a large amount of spiritual stones. However, if they made a move here, they were afraid that Xianping's helpers would come. Therefore, they found an excuse to ask for his help and deceived Xianping into the deep mountains behind the temple. The result was naturally ferocious. Xianping's situation immediately became precarious. Among the 8 people, aside from 2 whose cultivation was lower than Xianping's, the others were all higher than him. Especially the leader, who was in the early stage of core formation. How could Xianping be a match for them? Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu was worried about the 3 people's safety and gave each of them a pile of talismans to protect themselves. Under the encirclement of the 8 people, Xianping used a bunch of random talismans to open a path and actually killed his way out of the encirclement and fled. However, his body was also riddled with wounds. At the critical moment, he was lucky that he knew to take out the silver ball that Yu Qianqiu had given him and send out a distress signal. However, he wasn't confident and didn't know if it would be of any use. There were core formation cultivators among the 8 people. In terms of speed, Xianping couldn't escape very far. After using up all the talismans he had, he was finally trapped in a valley. Xianping looked around and sadly discovered that Yu Qianqiu had not appeared in time. Just as he was about to fight to the death, he saw a servant in black clothes and a black hat suddenly appear on top of a nearby rock. Such a coquettish and familiar attire, who else could it be but Yu Qianqiu? Boss didn't lie to me, he really did come to save me. Xian Ping, who was riddled with wounds and dressed in rags, was so excited that tears almost flowed out. With a trembling voice he loudly shouted, "Boss!" The 8 of them immediately noticed Yu Qianzhou, who was on top of the mountain rock. He was dressed like a servant, yet he had suddenly appeared in the remote mountains. It was too strange. The leading core formation cultivator shouted, "The Deluo sect is handling business. Unrelated people, get out of the way." He discovered that with his cultivation level he couldn't see through the person's cultivation level and immediately panicked. Thus he used the name of the Deluo sect. The Deluo sect is handling business. Unrelated people, get out of the way. Yu Qianzhou snorted and jumped down from the rock with a sullen face. He walked toward the surrounded Xian Ping without the slightest scruple, laughing evilly as he said, "Deluo sect? What a great show of power. Hehe. It seems that I and the Deluo sect have an inexplicable fate. I can't even pick a corner and run into them. What a goddamn coincidence." Chapter 336. From his words he seemed to be an old acquaintance of the Deluo sect. The 8 hesitantly let him pass. In reality, since they couldn't see through his cultivation, none of them dared to stop him. Yu Qianzhou sized up Xian Ping, who was in rags and covered in wounds, and asked in a deep voice, "What exactly happened?" Xian Ping was relieved that his boss was here. He angrily glared at the 8 and told them everything that had happened. Yu Qianzhou's eyebrows rose higher and higher as he listened. He coldly looked at the 8 and suddenly snorted, "8 against 1? As expected of the Deluo sect's disciples. How could you do such a thing? You dared to provoke my people, humph. It's your bad luck to fall into my hands. None of you will escape today." The 8 were shocked. They couldn't see through this newcomer's cultivation, and he spoke so arrogantly. He must be an expert. The core formation cultivator took a step forward and cupped his hands. "Senior, please calm down. From your words, you seem to have a deep relationship with our Deluo sect. I believe we mishandled this matter and caused a misunderstanding. I hope that Senior will give face to our Deluo sect and be magnanimous." The cultivation world didn't judge one's age based on one's appearance. They determined that Yu Qianzhou was an expert based on his cultivation. Deep relationship? When Yu Qianzhou heard this, he laughed and teased, "You are right. I am indeed very familiar with your Deluo sect. Furthermore, our friendship is not shallow. For example, I am very familiar with your Deluo sect's elder Zhou Xian. The 8 people were pleasantly surprised as they looked at each other. It seemed like they managed to escape unscathed. The leader of the group bowed deeply and said, "So it turns out to be Elder Zhu's good friend. We were too rash." Then he nodded to the others. The 8 people bowed together and said, "Greetings, Senior." Yu Qianzhou didn't act polite and accepted their greetings. Xian Ping was a little discouraged. It turned out that boss was familiar with them. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to take revenge. The core formation cultivator smiled and said, "Since Senior is Elder Zhu's friend, could you tell me your name? I'll go back and report it. If Elder Zhu asks, it'll be easier for us to answer." He thought this matter was over and wanted to return to the sect. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and said, "It's better not to say my name. If your sect master finds out, he will definitely be furious." "Senior, why is that?" the core formation stage cultivator asked in confusion. Sigh. Yu Qianzhou let out a long sigh and said, "Back then I lost control of myself outside the 100 Flowers Valley and killed your sect leader's son Luo Xiaohan. I even killed a few Deluo sect disciples and scared Zhou Xian away. How could your sect leader not be furious when he found out my name?" Ah. The group of people turned pale with fright after hearing this. The core formation stage cultivator pointed at him and stammered, You're Yu Qianzhou?" Yu Qianzhou raised an eyebrow and dusted the crooked hat on his head. He sneered and said, "That's right, I am Yu Qianzhou. Hehe. I didn't expect you to know me. Seems like my name is quite famous in your Deluo sect." With his confirmation, all 8 of them subconsciously took a step back with pale faces. How could the name Yu Qianzhou not be famous in Deluo sect? Ever since he beat up Luo Xiaohan at the Wu clan, everyone in the Daoist sect had heard of his name. Afterward he became even more infamous outside the 100 Flower Valley. He killed Luo Xiaohan and all the disciples, and even the sect elder Zhou Xian had to avoid him. As a result, Deluo sect became the laughingstock of the entire cultivation world. A humiliation in exchange for Yu Qianzhou's reputation. In a fit of rage, the sect master ordered his disciples to search for this person. Unfortunately, Yu Qianzhou's whereabouts were elusive. Almost no one had ever seen him. Everyone thought that he was afraid of the Deluo sect's revenge and had hidden away in some corner of the sect. Now that the cultivation world had undergone a great upheaval, the Daoist sect had put away their thoughts and had almost forgotten about this person. Who would have thought that they would run into this malefic star here? This guy could even scare away a tribulation passing stage elder, so how could they, with their mere cultivation, stand a chance against him? Xian Ping, who was covered in wounds, couldn't help but laugh. He thought to himself, I thought I wouldn't be able to get my revenge. Boss is so funny. He's obviously the enemy, but he's still trying to be friends. Xian Ping naturally knew of Deluo sect's status in the cultivation world. Now that he saw Deluo sect's disciples scared of their boss, he felt proud. He didn't follow the wrong person. Yu Qianzhou, don't be so insolent. Hiding in the wilderness and bullying us little disciples is nothing. If you have the ability, come to my Deluo sect. The core formation stage cultivator knew that today was not going to be a good day, so his tone became tough. Yu Qianzhou sneered. Thank you for your warm invitation. Don't worry. Even if Deluo sect doesn't come looking for me, I will. When I come looking for your Deluo sect, it will be the day that Deluo sect's name is erased from the cultivation world. Xian Ping. He turned around and shouted. Revenge. Whoever hurt you, beat them up. Don't let a single one of them go. My people aren't that easy to bully. They're a bunch of blind bastards. Xian Ping was a dull person, but people like him always hated evil. Wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth with his tattered sleeves, he raised his sword and rushed towards a person without hesitation. The heaviest sword wound on his back was caused by this person's flying sword. With his boss backing him up, he naturally had to get revenge. The man fearfully glanced at his fellow disciples to his left and right. Suddenly, he threw away his flying sword, jumped onto it, and turned around to flee. You're running to the sky. Yu Qianzhou snorted and pointed his finger. A glistening water dragon shot out from his finger and quickly chased after the man. Water. Everyone, including those from Deluo sect, was stunned. They had never seen a spell like this. Before the man could get far, the water dragon wrapped around him and he struggled. The water dragon gradually shrank and the man's body gradually expanded. His stomach in particular was unbelievably big. The man looked like he was in pain. He opened his mouth as if he wanted to call for help, but the water dragon wrapped around him sucked in a lot of water. With a bang, the man exploded. Blood rained down from the sky, along with broken skin and broken limbs. A skinless head fell in front of everyone. This kind of death was a ghastly sight to the group of people, and they were extremely terrified. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and the scattered water reformed into a water dragon and flew back. However, it was dyed red with blood. Yu Qianzhou frowned. You ruined my nest of good water. He formed a seal with his fingers, and the blood instantly turned into dozens of cold red icicles. They covered the sky and glared at the people below. Whoever dares to run will end up like this. My people are not to be trifled with. Behave yourselves and wait to be slaughtered. Yu Qianzhou scanned the crowd and said coldly. Xian Ping looked at the red icicles in the sky. With the help of his boss, he immediately became spirited. The flying sword in his hand quickly shot towards a person who was in a daze. That person didn't even have the time to react. He didn't even have the time to scream before his head was sent flying by a fountain of blood. His eyes were wide open in the air as he died with grievances. Since they were going to die either way, why would they wait to be slaughtered? The core formation cultivator shouted, "Split up and run. Those who can escape with their lives, hurry back to the sect and let them avenge us." In an instant, the 7 of them jumped onto their flying swords and flew away. If I can't even deal with you guys, then what the hell am I supposed to do? Yu Qianzhou sneered. He formed a seal with his fingers, and the red icicles in the air scattered and chased after them. With his nascent soul cultivation, chasing after these people with his icicles was a piece of cake. In all directions, screams could be heard. One by one they fell from the flying swords in the air. Those who fell were all pierced by the icicles and were pinned to the ground, struggling in pain. Xian Ping chased after them and chopped off their heads one by one. This silent gourd was really hard to tell, but he was also ruthless. The core formation cultivator, on the other hand, had some skills. A few icicles that chased after him were all smashed by his palm. In the end, dozens of icicles surrounded him and he immediately smashed a few more. Suddenly his body trembled and his chest felt cold. Looking down, he saw an icicle protruding from his chest. Perhaps he knew he was going to die. He raised his head to the sky and howled. Suddenly his howl stopped and he fell from the sky like a hedgehog. Chapter 337. The two of them returned to the dilapidated temple at the foot of the mountain. A pot was set up in the middle of the courtyard and a fragrant meat soup was being cooked. A group of orphans were holding large white steamed buns and eating the meat soup with relish. They had made it themselves. Seeing the two appear, the group of children stood up. Perhaps it was because they saw Xianping covered in blood. They looked at Xianxia with fear. They probably misunderstood Xianxia. Xianxia looked around the dilapidated temple and shook his head at Xianping with a strange expression. This was his nature. It was hard to change. Xianping pointed at the group of children and said, "Boss, they are all here." Xianxia nodded. "Leave them to me. There's no need to search for more people in the future. Quickly return to the general's mansion. When I'm not here, listen to Zhou Xian. Understood?" Understood. After seeing Xianxia's methods today, Xianping was completely convinced. Xianxia didn't say anything else. With a wave of his hand, the children in the courtyard disappeared along with the pot of meat soup. Then he himself also disappeared. Seeing that everyone was gone, Xianping immediately took off his clothes and put on a new set of clothes. He didn't stop to rest and flew toward the direction of the capital. This was the good thing about wooden people. They were stubborn. The moment Xianxia gave them a command, they immediately carried it out. Xianxia didn't stop to look for Ling Feng and Beizi. After taking in the people they had gathered, he told them what he told Xianping and returned to the general's mansion. Seeing him, Zhou Xian quickly asked, "How is Xianping?" "He's fine. He ran into a group of trash from the Daoist sect, but they've been dealt with." Xianxia walked to the table and drank a cup of tea. He turned around and said, "I've already ordered Ling Feng and the other two to hurry to the capital. From now on, you'll be in charge of the 3 of them and the 10 members in the mansion. Remember to keep a low profile. The cultivation world isn't peaceful at this time." Zhou Xian said with an embarrassed smile, "That's not good, right? How can I command them?" Xianxia waved his hand and said, "There's no need to say anything more. I've wasted too much time this time, so I don't have time to argue with you. I've already instructed Ling Feng's group of 3 and those 10 team members. Feel free to use them. As for the restriction-breaking pill, arrange a time for them to consume it. Don't say that you can't even do this. There are more important tasks for you in the future." Zhou Xiaotian's eyes lit up when he heard that. He had long desired to roam the cultivation world. That way his cultivation would not have been in vain. However, he was tied down by his family and could not leave at will. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Boss, don't worry, I understand. Let's not talk about this anymore. Your father is probably waiting anxiously for a long time. I still have to go to your father's place." As soon as Xianxia finished speaking, he disappeared again, leaving Zhou Xiaotian looking forward to how he would make his way in the cultivation world in the future. Little did he know that when he truly stepped into the cultivation world, what awaited him would be a baptism of blood and slaughter. In the Western military camp, there were no tents anymore. Instead, there were sturdy and reliable barracks. On the training field, Xiantian was wearing his military uniform and personally leading the training of the army. Not far away, on a tall watchtower, Wenguang was wearing a full set of armor as he looked at the elite troops training below. He did not know when this army would be able to display its usefulness. After all, a general without a battle was lonely. Wenguang turned around and looked at the 4 people behind him. These were the cultivators that Xianxia had sent to protect him. At that time he did not think too much about it because he wanted to escape from the capital. But who knew that it was easier to invite a god than to send him away? Now that he thought about it, Xianxia had sent these people. In addition to protecting him, he also had the intention of monitoring and controlling him. If he did not follow Xianxia's instructions, he believed that if these people wanted to take the heads of him and his father, it would be as easy as taking something out of their pocket. No matter how brave the soldiers in the army were, who could stop them? This Xianxia was really far-sighted. In the face of the sudden incident at that time, besides solving the problem, he actually made people unknowingly become his pawns. Zhou Xiaotian looked in the direction of the capital and sighed in his heart. His wife and son were there. He did not know when he would be able to lead the army to the east and reunite with his family. But all of this depended on Yu Qianzhou, who had disappeared from the cultivation world for a long time. He would occasionally come in contact with some rogue cultivators. He had heard of Yu Qianzhou's big actions in the cultivation world. However, he hadn't heard any news about him for a long time. He didn't know where he had gone. "Chief!" Shi Wenguang suddenly heard a shout behind him. It took him a long time to react. He turned around and saw that it was Yu Qianzhou who he had been thinking about. Yu Qianzhou smiled and said, "General, what are you thinking about? Why are you so lost in thought?" Shi Wenguang did not answer. He cupped his fists and said, "So it's Mr." Taking this opportunity, Shi Shaoan took a look at Yu Qianzhou, who was still dressed like a servant of his family. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. This guy was obviously a strong person, but he always appeared in front of him with a cowardly look. As the two of them spoke, they leaned on the wooden railing of the sentry tower. As far as their eyes could see, there were no clouds in the blue sky and the sun was shining brightly. On the vast land, thousands of soldiers and horses were moving in an orderly manner. It was a magnificent sight. Looking at the extraordinary martial arts practice below, Yu Qianzhou sighed. "General is really good at leading troops. I believe that General is already prepared to lead the army to the east." A trace of joy flashed in Shi Wenguang's eyes. He threw off his cloak and waved his hand at the people below. He said in a heroic manner, "My millions of soldiers are ready for battle and we have sufficient provisions. As long as Mr. is ready, we can lead the army to the east at any time. I guarantee that in less than a year we will be able to conquer the whole of China." "Good." Yu Qianzhou applauded. "The name of the pillar of the state general is known to the world. Wherever the general points his sword, the army will look down on them. Who dares to stand in his way? Naturally he will be invincible." But Yu Qianzhou's tone softened a little. He smiled and said, "The time is not right yet. General needs to be patient for the time being. But don't worry, General. The day will not be too far away." Shi Wenguang thought that he had brought good news. But when he heard that, his heart turned cold again. Yu Qianzhou smiled and took out the letter Shi Shaotian gave him. He handed it over and said, "This is a letter from General's family. I believe it will make General feel better." Shi Wenguang took the letter and shook his head. He sighed, "I wonder when my family will be reunited." Although he said that, he knew that his family was also in Yu Qianzhou's hands. He had no choice but to listen to him. "I almost forgot to tell General a piece of good news. I believe Madam has mentioned it in her letter. But I still want to congratulate General in advance." Yu Qianzhou smiled. "General's eldest daughter-in-law is pregnant. General will be a grandfather soon." "Really?" Shi Wenguang was overjoyed. He immediately found the letter from his wife and read it carefully. Yu Qianzhou did not disturb him. He waved to a few of his men and they went down the watchtower together. Shi Wenguang read the news that he was going to be a grandfather in the letter. He was overjoyed. But when he saw the date at the end of the letter, he was stunned. Wasn't this letter written today? How did it get here within 6 hours? From the capital city to here, it was such a long distance. He immediately thought of Yu Qianzhou's supernatural power. He couldn't help but gasp. When he came back to his senses, he looked around and saw the 4 bodyguards climbing up again. One of them bowed and said, "General, our leader has some matters to attend to and has to leave first. He asked us to bid farewell on his behalf." Shi Wenguang waved his hand in a daze. He thought, "It's over. My grandson is going to fall into that guy's hands again." Chapter 338. Within the twilight valley of the Fei region, a strange yet majestic blue flame was blazing. Yu Qianzhou, who had left the western barracks, had returned here. This was for no other reason than that he had used up most of the blue fire elemental essence in his body. He needed to replenish it so that he could defend himself if something unexpected happened. Looking up at the azure flames, Yu Qianzhou walked up to them. Stretching out his palm, he circulated the star flame fire art, and dense azure fire elemental energy flowed into his hand. As he was happily absorbing, an angry roar suddenly rang out in his mind. "Fire thief, it's you again." Startled, Yu Qianzhou looked down into the eye of fire. This voice seemed to belong to the Fey child underground who was not afraid of fire. In his days, a force cut off his absorption of the fire elemental energy. Needless to say, it was the little Fey down below. Yu Qianchou raised an eyebrow and coldly snorted, "Little Fei, I'll let you steal it." Without another word, he bent his body and leaped into the azure flames. His limbs spread out as he floated in the flames. The star flame fire art madly circulated, and the fire elemental energy continuously flowed into his body. What a shameless fire thief, hurry up and stop. The child's voice in his mind immediately began to curse. Unfortunately, it didn't seem to know much about cursing and only repeated the same few words. How could such words pierce through Yu Qianchou's skin? Yu Qianchou didn't even blink as he continued to absorb. He concluded that the person down below couldn't come out, or else they wouldn't just be talking. The child's voice seemed to grow weaker and weaker until it was pleading, "Kind fire thief, I beg you, please don't absorb anymore. If you do, it will be very difficult for my little brothers and sisters to wake up." In the end, the voice slowly faded away. Yu Qianchou didn't care about the life or death of the Fae. He inhaled until he was full and floated back to the shore. As soon as he withdrew the fire art, 2 azure flames flickered in his eyes. His entire body was filled with vigor, and he stretched comfortably before suddenly disappearing from the spot. When Xiaoqin reappeared, he was already at the sea 50 kilometers away from the fiendish ghost domain. He looked around but did not find anything strange. The long sword on Yu Qianchou's back popped out. He jumped onto the flying sword and flew out from the craggy rocks towards the southern sea purple bamboo forest. He did not know what Bai Tongqun wanted him to do and how long it would take. Therefore he took the risk of delaying some time and went back to deal with his personal affairs first. Otherwise he would never be able to calm down. The vast South Sea was boundless. Birds flew in the sky, blue waves surged to the heavens, and occasionally whales and sharks showed their backs. Riding on a flying sword, riding on the sea breeze, the blazing sun like fire, the rolling waves of the blue sea, sleeping during the day and rising at night, the bright moon attracting the stars. Yu Qianchou flew alone above the vast sea for 2 days and nights. He estimated that he was about to reach the location Bai Tongqun had mentioned, but he still didn't see that bullshit southern sea purple bamboo forest. He couldn't help but feel a little confused. "Don't play with me. Old man Bai wasn't that humorous." Standing on the flying sword, he looked around with his hand on his forehead like Monkey Sunday. He didn't even see a small island. How could there be a purple bamboo forest? Suddenly, an indistinct white fog in the distance caught his attention. He quickly flew over on his flying sword. When he was in the sky, the vast sea of fog below made his eyes light up. He had stayed on supporting Immortal's island before, and there was a similar island protection formation there. Other than defending against enemies, it also had another function. In the words of his previous life, it was to prevent natural disasters such as typhoons and tsunamis. This was probably the legendary southern sea purple bamboo forest. Damn, I finally found it. It's not fun to go for a ride on the sea for a few days. Yu Qianchou patted his chest in relief. When he got close to the sea of fog on his flying sword, he circulated his primordial qi and shouted, "May I ask if this is the southern sea purple bamboo forest?" His voice rolled into the sea of fog. After a while there was no response. Yu Qianchou wanted to barge into the island protection formation to take a look, but he was worried that it was a killing formation. He couldn't help but wonder if the owner wasn't home or if his voice was too soft. Thus he shouted again, "May I ask if this is the southern sea purple bamboo forest? Is the owner home?" Who? Is there an end to that broken voice? Why are you shouting in the middle of the day? Can't you let me sleep? Leave now, this is not the southern sea purple bamboo forest. A lazy and impatient voice came from the sea of fog. It didn't sound loud, but it made Yu Qianchou's ears ring. Yu Qianchou was shocked. What a high cultivation level. Then he was stunned again. After all this time, this wasn't the southern sea purple bamboo forest? Then where would it be? Senior, since you live here, you must know the location of the southern sea purple bamboo forest. Senior, please give me some pointers. I will be very grateful, Yu Qianchou politely said. I don't know. Leave, don't disturb my afternoon nap. Just as the lazy voice finished and Yu Qianchou was feeling gloomy, a girl's voice came from the sea of fog again. Mister, why are you looking for the southern sea purple bamboo forest? If the reason is reasonable, I can give you a pointer or two. As long as someone knew, Yu Qianchou's eyes lit up. He cupped his fists and said, I don't have any reason to look for the southern sea purple bamboo forest. I am here under the orders of my master. The woman replied with an "oh" and said, Who is your master? How do you know about the Southern Sea Purple Bamboo Forest? Hearing this, normal people didn't know about this place. Yu Qianchou replied, my master's surname is Bai. He lives in the demon region's Shuntian Island. The girl's clear and melodious voice exclaimed, your senior Bai's disciple? What? Elder Bai took in a disciple? The lazy voice immediately became spirited and said, see, let him in. I want to see what kind of person can make Elder Bai take a liking to him. As soon as the voice finished, the sea of fog churned and a passage was quickly opened up in front of Yu Qianchou. The girl said, I didn't know you are Elder Bai's disciple. Please don't take it to heart. Please come in. Seemed like these two were very familiar with Bai Changchun. Were they enemies or friends? After hesitating for a while, Yu Qianchou still flew in carefully along the passage. After all, if he wanted to know where the Southern Sea Purple Bamboo Forest was, he had to ask these two people. After passing through the passage, the surrounding sea of fog disappeared. It was really similar to the island's protective formation. From the outside it looked hazy, but from the inside there was nothing blocking it. Yu Qianchou put away his flying sword and landed on the ground. A girl in purple was already waiting at the side. Yu Qianchou only took a glance and was immediately attracted. Her beautiful hair was unrestrained and her face was beautiful, quiet and dignified. She had a pair of big eyes that were filled with intelligence and her skin was fair. Coupled with her purple dress, she seemed to have an extraordinary temperament. A simple purple ribbon was tied around her waist, outlining her graceful figure. It was the first time they met, so it wasn't good to be too lecherous. He had to leave a good impression on the beauty. Yu Qianchou forced himself to look elsewhere. It was fine if he didn't look, but the moment he looked, his face darkened. There were bamboos all around him and they were purple bamboos that he had never seen before. He was currently in a purple bamboo sea. If someone said that this wasn't the Southern Sea Purple Bamboo Forest, he wouldn't believe it even if he was beaten to death. He was obviously fooled. Chapter 339. A gust of wind blew, the bamboo sea swayed and rustled. A few purple bamboo leaves swirled and flew between the two of them. The lady in purple saw that Yu Qianchou didn't look good and seemed to see through his displeasure. She couldn't see through his cultivation, so she bowed and said, this is the Southern Sea Purple Bamboo Forest. My master is used to being free and unfettered. He doesn't have any taboos when he speaks. If he offended you in any way, I apologize on behalf of my master. I hope you won't take it to heart. With the lady apologizing, Yu Qianchou's anger was reduced by half. Moreover, this was the Purple Bamboo Forest. That middle stage demigod must be here. Even if he was angry, he had nowhere to vent. He remembered that Bai Changchun said that Master Nongzhu had a female disciple. This must be the lady in front of him. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. Since this is the Southern Sea Purple Bamboo Forest, you must be Master Nongzhu's disciple. The one who spoke before was Master Nongzhu. Yes, Elder Bai must have mentioned it. The lady in purple smiled. My name is Zi. May I know your name? Yu Qianchou sized her up and said with cupped hands, Mrs. dressed in purple, you are indeed as beautiful as your name suggests. I am Yu Qianchou. You're Yu Qianchou? Zi suddenly asked. Yu Qianchou was startled and said, Lady Zi, have you heard of me? Zi shook her head slightly and said, I think I've heard my master mention this name before, but that person's reputation in the cultivation world isn't that great. He must have the same name as Mr. Why would Elder Bai accept such a notorious person as a disciple? She then raised her hand to lead the way and said, My master is at the Zhulang Paradise. Please follow me, mister. She then walked gracefully and led the way. Yu Qianchou followed behind with a face full of suspicion. He thought to himself, is there anyone else called Yu Qianchou in the cultivation world other than me? Faster thief. How could such an eccentric name have the same name and a bad reputation? No, if I have the chance, I must get rid of this person, lest he ruin my reputation, especially in front of a beauty. Within the bamboo forest, there was a 1-meter-wide path that seemed to be paved with cobblestones. The winding path led deep into the bamboo forest. Walking on the small path, the bamboo forest on both sides was so dense that it was almost impossible to see the sun. Occasionally, the sunlight would shine on the thick layer of bamboo leaves, giving off a special feeling. As Zi walked past, the scattered purple bamboo leaves on the path automatically drifted into the bamboo forest on both sides. Seeing such a strange scene for the first time, Yu Qianchou could not help but look around. The purple bamboo was indeed beautiful. Some were slender, some were noble, and some were like the belly of a Buddha. They were probably rare species, and he had to find a chance to transplant some of them to Utopia. Just as he was thinking this, he passed through the bamboo forest. Suddenly, a courtyard appeared in the depths of the bamboo forest. It was purple in color and was made from purple bamboo. Several houses were connected to each other, and there were even a few bamboo pavilions in between. The layout was very elegant. There was a purple bamboo fence outside, and on the porch archway that was connected to the small path, there was a plaque that was so purple that it was almost black. On it was written Bamboo Paradise. This plaque was most likely made from an old piece of purple bamboo that had been cut in half. In the bamboo courtyard, there was a faint purple aura lingering around. It looked like a paradise on earth. Some unknown birds were leisurely jumping around inside, and they were not afraid even if people came. Xianxia suddenly noticed a middle-aged man leaning lazily at the entrance of the main house, looking at him curiously with a burning gaze. Xianxia also looked at him. His first impression could only be described with one word, and that was handsome. Although he looked middle-aged, he was definitely a handsome man. He was tall, neither fat nor thin, just right. He was dressed like a scholar, and there was a purplish-black bamboo flute hanging on his waist. His hair was tied up on top of his head, and his hair was black and shiny. His starry eyes were bright, and his sword-like eyebrows made him look even more heroic. The bridge of his nose was tall and straight, and his cheeks were thin. His slightly thin lips formed a slight smile, and there were 2 dimples on both sides of his cheeks. His face showed a sense of vicissitudes, and it was a pity that it was destroyed by the laziness that he emitted. However, there was no doubt about the special charm of this kind of man. In addition to his outstanding appearance, he was definitely a handsome man. He was a super handsome man and not a beautiful man. He was the kind of man that even men had to admit was handsome. Xianxia felt a wave of sadness in his heart. There was actually such a handsome man in this world. How could other men live? This kind of man was a scourge if he went out. He was the kind that specialized in scourging women and young girls. Women would probably fall in love with him once they saw him. A scourge. Big scourge. However, his cultivation was so high that it was frightening. It really made one speechless. Ziyi raised her hand and pointed, "This is my master." Xianxia took 2 steps forward and bowed respectfully. Junior Xianxia greets Mr. Nongzhu. Don't be so polite. Nongzhu waved her hand casually, and her face released a charming lazy smile. However, the smile froze immediately. She was stunned and asked, "What did you say your name was?" Xianxia scratched his head and bowed again. "My name is Xianxia." "Your name is Xianxia." Nongzhu's eyes lit up. She left the door frame and walked a few steps down. She circled around Xianxia and asked, "There is also a man named Xianxia in the cultivation world." Xianxia betrayed his master twice and made a lot of noise in the cultivation world. It is said that he also practiced a set of fire spells. It can be said that he is quite famous, and the cultivation world calls him the scum of the cultivation world. I have secretly looked for him several times, but he is so elusive that even I have not seen him. Do you know him? The more Xianxia listened, the darker his face became. It turned out that the Xianxia with a bad reputation that Ziyi mentioned was him, and the person that he wanted to find a chance to get rid of was also him. Damn it. Could it be that my reputation is really so bad that it's spread all the way here? Xianxia's face twitched a little and replied, "I am afraid that the Xianxia that you mentioned is me." "You're Xianxia?" Ziyi shouted in surprise. When she looked at Xianxia again, the expression on her face seemed to be a little disdainful. Xianxia was speechless. It seemed that he had repeated his name several times. Why did it sound a little strange? Doesn't look like it. Nongzhu shook her head and looked at him carefully. She said, "You don't look like the legendary scum of the cultivation world. What's more, old Bai is used to being serious. It is impossible for him to accept that Xianxia as his disciple. What evidence do you have to prove that you are Xianxia?" Xianxia's neck thickened. Then he became discouraged and said dejectedly, "I don't know how to prove it. Is it that important whether I am Xianxia or not?" "Of course it is important. Xianxia, whom I have been looking for everywhere, has come to me voluntarily. Of course I have to verify your authenticity." Nongzhu pinched her chin and said, "I have a few questions to test you. If you pass, you can prove that you are Xianxia." Xianxia felt dizzy. How could he meet such a person? He looked like a decent person. Was there something wrong with his brain? He wanted to find a place to bang his head against the wall. Nongzhu said seriously, "Let me ask you, which teacher is Old Man Bai?" "The third," Yu Qianchou replied weakly. Ziyi frowned and her gaze towards Yu Qianchou was filled with disgust. "Yes, that's the right answer." Nongzhu nodded and asked, "Which sect did you join first?" "Onquang-tsung." "Well, that's right. Which sect did you join second?" "Fuxian Island." "Well, not bad. After you joined the second sect, did you do anything wrong to the first sect?" "No." "Well, that's not right. Didn't you kill the grandson of the first sect leader?" "I did." "You didn't kill the grandson of the first sect leader?" "I did." "That's right. The first sect leader was also killed by you, right? It said that there were a bunch of other sect members." "I did." He abandoned his own sect to join another sect, and then turned around and killed his former fellow sect members. He even killed the previous sect leader. Don't tell me that doing this is not letting down his original sect? Yu Qianchou was speechless. It was Ong Kwang-tsung who did wrong to him first. He never felt that there was anything wrong with what he did. But when this guy asked him, even he felt that he had done something disgraceful, let alone in the eyes of others. Forget it. I don't have anything in common with this psychopath and there's no need to explain. He shook his head and said, "No." Ziyi frowned again. She didn't even look at Yu Qianchou. Nongzhu's eyes lit up. He nodded and said, "Now I believe that you are the scum of the cultivation world. The truth is right in front of you but you still dare to lie. You are indeed the scum of the cultivation world." "Wait a minute." He suddenly asked in confusion, "Didn't you tell Old Bai about what you did? Otherwise how could he accept you as a disciple?" Yu Qianchou wanted to catch this guy and beat him up. But if he did he would definitely be beaten up. So he gritted his teeth and said, "I have told my master about all these things. I didn't hide it from him." "That's strange. Did Old Bai change his mind?" Nongzhu asked curiously. He thought for a while and shook his head. He probably didn't understand. Then he said, "I heard that you have practiced a powerful fire spell. Can you show it to me? It's the best way to prove that you are Yu Qianchou." Yu Qianchou couldn't stand it anymore. Even if his cultivation was high, he didn't have to torture him like this. He took a deep breath and said word by word in a deep voice, "Mr. Nongzhu, what do you want? Did I offend you in some way?" "Humph." Ziyi snorted, "This is not Shuntian Island. No one will be polite to you. Show it to me. Don't make yourself unhappy." It's okay. Ziyi, don't talk nonsense." Nongzhu tried to smooth things over. "Yu Qianchou, I don't mean anything. I just heard that you used the fire spell when you were in the core bearing stage and scared away a cultivator in the crossing calamity stage. I'm really curious. I want to see what's so special about your fire spell. I really don't mean anything else. Why don't you show it to me?" He had to lower his head when he was under someone else's roof. Yu Qianchou's face turned livid. He said indifferently, "Yes, sir." As soon as he finished speaking, he emitted a wang sound, and his entire body emitted a green flame, dyeing the surroundings into a green color. Chapter 340. The sudden appearance of the green light immediately frightened the birds in the courtyard and caused them to scatter in all directions. Yu Qianchou silently stood in the middle of the fire with his sword behind his back, allowing the green flames around him to wantonly spew out. He himself was like the source of the burning fire, like a dream or an illusion. This scene seemed a bit unreal. Nongzhu and Ziyi were shocked at first, but then they realized something was wrong. The fire on Yu Qianchou looked strange and fierce, but they could not feel any warmth. After a moment of silence, Ziyi said coldly, "What overbearing fire spell? It looks weak. I think it's just an illusion." Yu Qianchou turned his head slowly and his emotionless eyes met Ziyi's. Ziyi's heart skipped a beat. His eyes were so cold. She didn't know that Yu Qianchou felt that he had been humiliated time and time again, and that he had already reached the critical point of exploding. He really wanted to let her know whether his stellar flame fire technique was just an empty shell. He was so angry that he needed to let it out. "Hey, I heard that the fire you use with your fire art is red. Why is it green?" Nongzhu frowned and said, "Yu Qianchou, did you not use your most powerful fire spell? Don't hide it. Show me what you're good at, I want to see that." The green fire was stirred. Yu Qianchou said slowly, "It's not that I want to hide it, but I'm afraid that if I use it, your purple bamboo forest will be destroyed. Nongzhu looked around the purple bamboo forest and then looked at Yu Qianqiu seriously. She suddenly said strangely, "Hee. Strange, I can't see through your cultivation. You can't be more powerful than me, can you?" He just noticed it now. Ziyi snorted. His cultivation can't be higher than Master's. Master, I was right. He's good at using illusion. Z, don't talk nonsense. The world is big and there are many extraordinary people. Old Man Bai is proud and arrogant and his cultivation base is even higher. There must be a reason why he chose him. After reprimanding her disciple, Nongzhu smiled at Yu Qianqiu and said, "As long as I'm here I can protect this purple bamboo forest. Yu Qianqiu, don't worry about using your fire spell. I really want to see it." As a cultivator at the middle stage of Huashan, her words were full of confidence. Yu Qianqiu nodded his head slightly, indicating that he would obey the order. He thought to himself, "I must burn this entire purple bamboo forest today, or else I will never be able to vent my anger." Seeing that Yu Qianqiu agreed, Nongzhu's eyes brightened. She retreated with Ziyi and watched Yu Qianqiu's actions. Yu Qianqiu didn't do much. He simply clenched his fists, his knuckles cracking, and he exhaled. However, the azure flames on the surface of his body began to fluctuate restlessly. A wave of scorching heat suddenly spread out. Yu Qianqiu did not say anything and rapidly pushed the temperature to the highest. Today he vowed to let this master and disciple know how powerful he was. Starting from his feet, the ground was scorched black and it continued to expand. The sudden appearance and rapid change of the temperature caused Nongzhu's pupils to constrict. As if remembering something, she exclaimed, "Twilight Valley's blue flame, it's blue flame. No, it's even more tyrannical than the blue flame." It seemed that he also knew about the demon ghost realm's blue flame. The moment such tyrannical heat appeared, the first to bear the brunt of it were naturally Nongzhu and Zi. Zi quickly circulated her energy to resist, and a ring of light rapidly formed around her. This was her stellar energy barrier. Normally, for a stellar energy barrier to appear in the form of a ring of light signified that the person's cultivation had reached the final stages of the tribulation. However, the blue flame's heat was far too tyrannical, and Yu Qianqiu was deliberately giving them a hard time. One could easily imagine just how terrifying the temperature was. Ziyi's serene face revealed an expression of fear. Her stellar energy barrier wavered as if it was about to be destroyed by the invisible heat, but she continued to use all her cultivation and clench her teeth to resist. Nongzhu immediately realized that something was wrong with her disciple and harshly yelled, "See, quickly retreat. This flame is not something you can endure with your cultivation." Ziyi glanced at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. Biting her lips, she obeyed her master's orders and teleported far away into the purple bamboo forest. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. "Brat, it seems that you really do want to burn down my purple bamboo forest. Fine, let me have a taste of your star flame fire art," Nongzhu said in high spirits, and her face was full of excitement. It seemed that she was the kind of person who had been lonely for a long time and was looking for a fight. However, it seemed a little too much for a middle stage of Huashan realm cultivator to fight an early stage of Yuaning realm cultivator. The purple-black flute on Nongzhu's waist appeared in her hand. She held it horizontally to her lips, and her slender fingers quickly flicked and pressed down, creating a series of finger shadows. Di-li-li. The clear sound of the flute was like the sound of nature. Just listening to the sound, it seemed to be refreshing. The blue flame on Yu Qianqiu's body fluctuated along with the sound of the flute, but with a cold hum, the fire of the blue flame suddenly increased. The spreading blackness on the ground bypassed Nongzhu and quickly attacked the surrounding buildings. Just now he used the high temperature to force Ce to retreat, but the high temperature that he controlled could not get close to Nongzhu. Therefore he controlled the strong heat to attack the surroundings and no longer fought against Nongzhu. He wanted to see how Nongzhu could protect the purple bamboo forest. Nongzhu, who was playing the flute, showed a faint smile on her face. The sound of the flute suddenly changed and became melodious. Yu Qianqiu, who was surrounded by the blue flame, slightly squinted his eyes. He saw that the sound of the flute in Nongzhu's hand actually spread out in a kind of almost tangible sound wave. It could be seen with the naked eye, and quickly formed a transparent ball in a certain range, blocking the invasion of the high temperature to the buildings and wrapping the two people in it. Yu Qianqiu tried his best to drive the flute, but the strong heat that used to be invincible in the past could not break the sound barrier. Don't steam the steamed buns, fight for your dignity. Xianxia clenched his fists and made a cracking sound. He straightened his chest and waved his arms, saying, "Ah." Boom! The blue flame suddenly burst out. He no longer fought against Nongzhu with the high temperature, but wanted to directly break the sound barrier with the fierce blue flame. In an instant, the transparent ball formed by the sound barrier was suddenly filled with the blue flame. Looking from the outside, it was like a blue ball with a diameter of dozens of meters emitting blue light. Ze, who was in the purple bamboo forest, witnessed all of this and her beautiful face turned pale. The high temperature just now still made her feel a lingering fear. If she was engulfed by this fierce green flame, she really didn't know if she would be able to endure it. In fact, her concern was unnecessary. If she really fought with Xianxia's cultivation, it would be very difficult for him to hurt her, no matter how strong the blue flame was. She couldn't just stand there and let Xianxia burn her with fire. The strong blue flame could not break the sound barrier. On the contrary, Nongzhu was still playing the flute with a smile on her face. When the flame was 1 meter away from him, it was difficult for it to move an inch. Xianxia knew that he was already giving it his all. He couldn't help but bitterly smile in his heart. This soul formation cultivator was truly extraordinary. Just a simple flute and he couldn't do anything about it. If the other party were to retaliate, Nongzhu really started to fight back. The sound of the flute suddenly became rapid, and Xianxia immediately felt a strong pressure coming from all directions. The sound barrier ball wrapped in the blue flame was shrinking slowly. It seemed that Nongzhu was going to send the blue flame back to where it came from. Xianxia wanted to fight back, but he immediately felt that the blood in his body was swelling, and his ears were buzzing. The blood in his chest seemed to be about to spurt out from his throat. His eyes were red and had a tendency to bulge out. He knew that with his cultivation he couldn't fight back at all. It was time to stop or he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. In a second, the released strong blue flame was quickly sucked back into his body. Chapter 341. After the blue flame faded, the transparent sound barrier disappeared. Nongzhu stopped playing the flute and looked at Xianxia meaningfully. She smiled and said nothing. She held the purple and black flute in her right hand and twirled it between her slender fingers dexterously. Xianxia even suspected that this was how he got his title of Mr. Nongzhu. Strange. Strange. You were able to hide the blue flame in your body and control it so freely. It's hard to imagine how you managed to cultivate it. Nongzhu's face was full of amazement. He then asked, "Does this blue flame come from Twilight Valley?" Xianxia silently nodded. Senior's cultivation is truly unfathomable. I overestimated my own abilities and overestimated the power of the blue flame. Nongzhu shook his head and smiled. After this test, I knew that you were only at the nascent soul stage. You don't need to take your defeat to heart. It would be strange if I couldn't even suppress you. To say that my cultivation is unfathomable would be an overestimation. In the entire cultivation world, I can't think of anyone with a more unfathomable cultivation than your master. As for the blue flame, it has already transcended the realm of ordinary flames and can never be overestimated. It's not that the blue flame isn't powerful, but that the difference in cultivation between you and me is too great. Did your master ever tell you about the blue flame? Master didn't, but Healy did tell me that this blue flame is one of the legendary 3 true flames. As for the rest, I don't know, Xianxia said. Healy. Nongzhu muttered and suddenly smiled. Your master accepted you as a disciple. Is he all right? It seemed that he still didn't know that Healy was dead. Xianxia bluntly said, I already killed Healy. What? You already killed Healy? Nongzhu cried out. After a moment of silence, he didn't ask Xianxia why Healy had been killed. He only sighed. It's good that he's dead. It's not easy to cultivate to become a human, and you still have to rely on being a human all day. Isn't that tiring? Let's not talk about him. You know this place because your master told you to come here, right? Yes. Xianxia nodded. Nongzhu smiled bitterly and said, Your master Shifu must be plotting something against me again. When the time comes he can just leave, but you want me to stay with you in the realm of demons. It's ridiculous. Did he ask you to come and get to know me so that we can get along in the future? Xianxia nodded, then shook his head and said, Master did say something like that, but this time he said that he has something for me to do. As for what it is, Master said that when I find you, you will tell me what I should do. Nongzhu, who was shaking her head, was stunned. She held the flute in her hand tightly. After a long time she looked at Zi, who was standing in the purple bamboo forest. She smiled bitterly again and said, Bai Chongchun. You worry too much, but why do you always drag me down? As your friend, do I have to worry for nothing? I have nothing to say about you worrying about the demon region and pulling me in. After all, I was the one who pulled you in back then. But do you have time to worry about the whole world? This time you don't even let my disciple go. Hearing this, Yu Qianchou, who was a bit discouraged, immediately became curious. He couldn't help but ask, Senior, what does my master want me to do? At this moment, Zi also walked back and looked at her master curiously. What? Do you want to do it? Nongzhu said angrily. He wants you to die and gamble with your life. Do you want to do it? Damn. Only people with mental problems would do it. Yu Qianchou subconsciously shrank his head and said with a smile, Senior, you must be joking. How could my master send me to die? Impossible. Nongzhu sneered and said, Then why didn't your master tell you what to do in person but asked you to ask me? I think he was too embarrassed to tell you. Let me ask you, do you know that your master is going to the East Holy Land? Yes. Healy said that master's lifespan was running out, and he couldn't wait until the next opening day of the Heaven and Earth formation. So master is basically going to go this time. Did your master tell you about the star bead? He did. He said that it was a treasure that even the immortals in the upper world coveted. The owner of it could become a god, and the ancient war started because of it. Nongzhu nodded and said, It is said that there is a solid reason to believe that this star bead didn't fall into anyone's hands, but was left in the territory of the Wuxia Empire. Damn. Yu Qianchou's eyes lit up and he said with a smile, That's not possible. If such a precious treasure was really left in the territory of Wuxia, it would have fallen into the hands of some big sects or masters in the cultivation world. Hee. Do you think people in the cultivation world of Wuxia don't want to look for it? However, after searching for tens of thousands of years, no one had been able to find it. Hence, everyone treated it as a legend and no one bothered to find it again. It should be over by now. But a highly respected fortune-teller from the Di-Rong kingdom said before his death that the star bead would reappear in the Wuxia Empire in 100 years. Hey, now there is something interesting to watch. All the soul-forming stage cultivators from all countries are eyeing the Wuxia Empire. Yu Qianchou asked suspiciously, Senior, what does a fortune-teller do? How did he convince everyone with just one sentence? It's similar to fortune-telling in the secular world, but he is more advanced. He doesn't hang out with ordinary people and his customers are all soul-forming stage cultivators from all countries. That old guy doesn't speak easily, but when he does, he never makes a mistake. How can people not believe him? So a bunch of soul-forming stage cultivators came to Wuxia to join in the fun. But your master is also from Wuxia, and he is the #1 soul-forming stage cultivator. If your master doesn't agree, no one dares to come. Damn. That old guy is really awesome. It's an honor to be his apprentice. Yu Qianchou blinked and asked, What happened then? Then the news that your master is going to the Eastern Holy Land in a few years got out. A bunch of people were prepared to wait for your master to leave before coming. But your master didn't want it. He took the initiative to send out invitations, inviting all the soul-forming stage cultivators to gather in the Eastern Sea. I was the one who sent the invitations. Your master has a lot of face, so no one dared to not go. Even I went. In the end, your master is awesome. Facing several hundred soul formation stage experts from various countries, he actually wanted to force everyone to swear a poison oath. The general meaning was that under the situation where he went to the Holy East Land and whether he was alive or dead, the soul formation stage experts present were not allowed to personally participate in this matter and were not allowed to personally visit the Chinese cultivation world. To be honest, although your master is a bit arrogant, this oath isn't too extreme. At least he left some leeway for those people and didn't completely cut off their hope. But with so many people present, your master is going against everyone alone, so naturally there are people who aren't afraid of him. They've started fighting. Yu Qianchou asked excitedly. Just imagine a person facing all the top experts in the world. Just this courage alone is enough to make people's blood boil. Zi, who was at the side, also had a strange look in her eyes. Hehe. When it comes to fighting, I've never seen your master afraid of anyone. Back then, before your master took over the demon ghost region when he was still in the early stage of soul-forming stage, he dared to look for experts all over the world to challenge, and beat some early-stage soul-forming stage cultivators until they were speechless. In the end, I thought of some ways to restrict your master to the demon ghost region, and your master became the world's #1 expert through fighting. In the sky above the Eastern Sea, Old Man Bai immediately killed 3 people because of a disagreement. What a good temper. Ze suddenly asked, Master, what were the cultivation levels of the 3 soul-forming stage cultivators that Old Man Bai killed? Do ordinary early-stage soul-forming stage cultivators have the guts to do that? Nongzhu asked in reply and continued with a bitter smile. Later, some soul-forming stage cultivators thought your master was too arrogant, so 16 soul-forming stage cultivators joined forces to fight your master, including 2 early-stage soul-forming stage cultivators. Well, in that battle I finally understood what it meant to be the #1 expert in the world. With a flip of his hand he could summon clouds and rain. With a flip of his hand he could control ice, wind, fire and water. He could move mountains and drain seas. Even the thunderbolts in the sky were casually turned into heavenly swords by him. It was as if there was nothing in this world that he couldn't borrow. He killed all 16 deity transformation cultivators. Even now when I think of that scene my heart still palpitates with fear. In the end the rest of them didn't dare to cause trouble and were all forced to swear an oath. Tell me, is your master still human? With such a terrifying cultivation level, how could he still stay in the cultivation world and not ascend to immortality?